Jeff, how about 10 seconds? Are we on? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the January 22nd, 2019 meeting of the Hendersonville Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I appreciate you all being here, and we're going to start this meeting as we typically do, and that's with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Please stand with me. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together, and thank you for the opportunity to serve our city, and thank you for the wonderfulness of our city you have provided for us. And thank you for the people that protect us here and the people who protect us far away. And thank you for us getting to experience that we have a new governor and that we live in a democracy that allows those type of things. Please continue to help folks that are in special needs, especially Louise Tristler, Dave Peterson, and Clay Folks, and some other folks that we may just hold in our heart right now. Continue to give us the wisdom so that somehow we may do your work here and as we leave from here. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. I'll entertain a motion to accept our agenda. Got a motion from Alderman Waters. And a second from Alderman Bolt. Alderman Sprouse.
You'll find on your desk a resolution 2019-8. It's come in hot from capital projects. And I'd like to add that it is.
You'll put it A under other agenda items. We'll make this A.5.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion. I'll second that. Alderman Robertson on this item?
No.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of adding Resolution 2019-8, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Alderman Robertson?
I wonder if we could move these items to a consent agenda, and it's under Roman numeral number 9, okay, with the exception of G. These are the appointments, and I assume that everybody's good with them, but I just wonder if one motion could approve all of their appointments or reappointments.
We have a motion to group items A through F under other agenda items. And a second. All those in favor of grouping those, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. We have 2 amendments to our agenda. All those in favor of accepting our amended agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. We have an agenda. Next, we have presentations. I'd like to ask Sherry Campbell to come up here. I asked Sherry Campbell to come tell us a little bit about the Sumner Teen Center, and I hope she tells us a lot, actually, because it is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity that we have in Sumner County. So, Sherry, I believe your microphone is on.
Testing.
Please,
okay.
There you go. You're
good. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. I am honored to be in a group of people that love to serve this community. My husband and I have lived here for over 25 years. We've raised our kids here, and at that point, we decided once they were gone, that we were going to give back to this community. And so we opened it's been 5 years now, the Sumner Teen Center. It is a nonprofit that serves teenagers. And let me start by saying that it is not a crisis center. I want to say that it's probably a pre-crisis center. And I say that because I don't know if anybody knows this, I'm sure you do, but within 5 years, something huge is going to hit our economy. And if you know what it is, you can yell it out, but the baby boomers are retiring. And in 5 years, the largest generation that America has ever had in the workforce is leaving, and the second largest generation that America has ever had is going to take its place, and that's the millennials. That's a good and a bad thing at the same time. So we are here to try to help our teenagers because the millennials have more information at their fingertips than any of us have ever had in the world. But they're not growing up. Something's happening with technology, with the information that they have that is keeping them from growing up. And, you know, the generation gap is huge there. So these teenagers have problems that we can't even relate to. I mean, yeah, you know the problems that we had, but not only do they have the drugs and the sex and the defiance, but they've got things like anxiety, depression that leads to suicide when you're 15 years old. Did we even understand that? I mean, and here's the fastest growing thing is cyber addiction. You know, how do you even deal with that when you're a baby boomer? So this technology is really isolating them. It's isolating them from their families, from their peers, from their churches. It's keeping them at home. It's making a virtual reality that really isn't real. So we're trying to get them out of the house, off the streets, and into our facility. We're helping them plug in. We're providing a totally free venue. At the core is to hang out and to be safe. We aren't here to compete with, you know, any of the programs out there already. We want to come alongside the guidance counselors that have hundreds of kids that they can't reach. We want to come alongside the 30 to 50% of the kids that have single parents and help those parents raise their children. So we just want to supplement and help them socially, have a place to meet, look at each other eye to eye, have activities, projects together. This year alone, we have serviced 350 teenagers. Some once, some every day of their lives. They are at our door. And I wish I could have time to tell you specific kids that have come into our theater program, for example, and been so crumpled up with anxiety and not being able to look at anybody, and watch them bloom into the lead of the theater program, and to give everybody a charge of do your best in front of all these people. And it's just, it's amazing. And we have kids all the way from high on the autistic spectrum to Merrill Hyde students coming together to do projects. So it's just really a phenomenon to see. Okay, so again, our programs are free. We've got, like I said, theater. We've got a free driver's ed program that's behind the wheel. We have job prep courses. We have a computer lab. We have social skills, of course. We teach them how to cook, clean, community service. You know, if you're not doing anything, you're affecting us. You get out and do something. So that, I just would encourage you guys to come visit us, to come connect with us socially on Facebook and things like that, and to use Scott. He's one of our founding board members. He would be happy to, I think, share some things for me. Yeah.
A few weeks ago, around Christmas, for Christmas, y'all had little ornaments, and that was a craft project from the Sumner Teen Center that they did as a fundraiser, and so that was part of that. But even something as simple as gathering people together to put together those ornaments can be a big deal. My kids, Sherry's kids, and just wanted to say there's certain things, if you've ever thought about how come kids don't know this, how can they not know that? Sumner Teen Center is where they're learning it. They're learning socialization skills. I can't believe that you have to teach someone how to talk to people, but we're taking people who can't have a one-on-one conversation, and then all of a sudden they're performing in a play in front of a large group. People who don't know how to do simple things like cook and fill out a job application and to make an interview and keep an interview. This is where they're learning those things. Those things that we may have learned from our parents or another trusted adult, these folks are learning there. And I wanted to appreciate those of y'all individually who've supported the Teen Center, collectively supported the Teen Center. And one thing I wanted to say that Sherry couldn't say herself is, Sherry has a full-time job, but puts about just as much time into the Teen Center without a salary. Randy, her husband's exactly the same way. So if you ever see any of their financials and see that there's a little bit of payroll, that goes for the part-timers, the people who run the programs, and the people who help a little bit with fundraising. But they do all of their work out of the goodness of their heart and the kindness to the community. And the only problem they're dealing with right now is success. that if they offer a space for 5 kids, they have 10 show up. And if they offer 10 programs and someone says, hey, why don't you do this, they offer that new program, whether it's driver's ed. Driver's ed's a huge program right now. Driver's ed or an art program or a coding program, more and more kids show up. So their biggest problem right now is meeting need. And they're doing a good job, and I encourage anyone to help them in any way they can. Sherry, thank you for you and Randy.
Thank you.
Sherry, there's also a cool space just for kids to hang out. Am I right?
It is.
Okay.
Friday nights, free food. We have free concerts. We play games, minute to win it things. You know, just it's a time for them to unwind, and when they relax, they will talk, and they may tell me something that they wouldn't tell you as a parent. They may show me something on their device that they would never show you as a parent, and that way I can speak truth into their lives. I can say, hey, what's up with that? You know, and steer them in a little bit better direction than where they may go without us. So,
And I think you said twice, it's all free?
all free.
And the location?
976 Grassland. It's over there across from Ball State where you get your emission testing done. It's a 4,000 square foot facility, and it's one big room so nobody can hide.
Sherry, thank you for what you're doing for our community.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very, very much.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you all. We have no public hearings on our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve our January 8, 2019 meeting minutes. A motion and a second. All in favor of approving our minutes from January 8, 2019, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. And next we have citizens' comments. A couple things. Comments may support or oppose particular issues or measures, but the motives of those with different views shall not be questioned or attacked. Malicious comments will not be allowed. Public comment shall be limited to 5 minutes per individuals, and speeches for or against particular candidates running for public office shall not be allowed. Stephen Puckett, Sanders Ferry Road.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, I'm Steve Puckett, reside at 228 Sanders Ferry Road, apartment 8021, Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm actually coming up here initially in my official capacity as a Democrat, the regional Democratic leader, to actually do something I wanted to do a couple months ago. We just, because of the way the agenda's been set up and different programs we've had prior to citizens' comments, just hadn't had an opportunity to do, and that is to actually thank the Hendersonville Police Department for their hard work during this last election cycle, and especially their courtesy that they showed the different canvassers that were out canvassing for different candidates. A lot of times when canvassers are out in different communities, individuals will call law enforcement to try to harass or intimidate. In our community, when someone would make that call, our officers actually would come out, be kind and respectful to our canvassers, and even enlist our canvassers as an extra set of eyes and ears in the community to help strengthen and protect our community. And so we greatly appreciate that. We also appreciate Hendersonville Police Department responding very quickly to Gene Brown Elementary when it was a voting precinct, when a call came in that there was a voter intimidation incident, and the fact that they have continued to investigate what is really a crime that is very difficult to prove because it requires witnesses that can clearly see and hear what had gone on. That's something that unfortunately is very difficult, and it requires vigilance of every voter, every community, everybody involved. So I know Chief Miller emphasizes the importance of vigilance, and that's a great thing that our city does, and that's appreciated. Then the second thing I've got is I know we're going to have a discussion about impact fees later on in the agenda, and I had a couple of questions that were brought to me that can hopefully be answered at that time that haven't been answered at previous presentations, and that is one of them was, is there a possibility of being able to assess impact fees that we can forward to the school system for impacts on schools? The second is what protections are we going to have to protect against abuse of these impact fees, such as becoming dependent on them for financing reoccurring costs, as opposed to the fact that they're, as it's been presented before, one-time money. because especially with what's happening in Mount Juliet, with the possibility they're going to have to triple their taxes, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we start becoming dependent on growth to simply balance the budget. That's a dangerous situation we can find ourselves into. And then the third is being able to keep up to date on our impact fees. I know there's concern that we'll set them and then we'll set them and kind of forget them. And how often we're going to review them, because right now we kind of informally keep update our impact fees deal by deal, as opposed to where we would have something that's set in stone and then we'd have to regularly review it. And then the last question that had been brought to me is flexibility issues. We have extreme flexibility right now in how we negotiate things with deal by deal. With the impact fees, would it rigid it up? Would it make it harder for us as a city to do better dealing? So those are the things. And again, thank you to the Hendersonville Police Department for all the hard work they're doing.
Stephen, thank you. Mary Burns, Roberta Drive.
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. As I came into the building, it came to my attention that our American flag was being flown without a light on it, and I would like for you to know that the proper form for flying our American flag after dark is that it does require a light on it. So either please take it down at night, which is no shame, or do it right and put the light on. So anyway, thank you for that. Of course, I'm here to talk trash, and I have been talking about the $750,000 on the fees for tipping fees, and that's not the entire trash bill that I want you to realize is happening. On page 89 and page 88 of your adopted current budget, it's over $4 million. So if somebody is talking to you about, we need to roll this contract over, please recognize that that could be a person who is attempting to do his company a very good job. It's $4 million. So when you open your budget, please look and verify that I have the right numbers. I got these some time back. But $4 million is the price of your fire station. And that's the cost to pick up the trash every year, not for a long period of time. So this has been going on for a long time, and it is something that needs to be corrected. Spending $4 million a year to throw my recyclable, well, not mine, I recycle mine and some of his, to throw recyclables into a landfill is outright, in my way of seeing, it's outright sinful. There's absolutely no reason to do this. I know, because I was an elected representative for 24 years. I am not new to the game. I know constituents that come to the microphone and pound on it and tell you what you really should be doing. But if you seriously think that it's okay to spend $4 million and not listen to your constituents, you'll never get my vote. Well, of course, you guys don't even do it the way we did. We did them all at large, but by trustee division, so everybody was accountable to all constituents. I don't even like the way you have us all boarded up into wards. It limits me. Anyway, I'm not trying to fix everything. I'm just trying to fix the trash. And it's garbage that somebody else will send you emails and tell you, oh, the sky is falling. China isn't going to buy our recyclables. Okay, well, what about Italy and Aruba and all of these other countries that are purchasing our materials that we should be taking and putting into products? The reason they purchase our recyclables is they're turning it around and they're sending it back to us in the form of a product. And China got too much, overstocked it, and they've put a halt on it. Okay, there are cities that are taking plastics, grinding them up, and putting them in their asphalt for resurfacing the roads. I don't expect each and every one of y'all to become a recycling expert, but I do expect you to listen to people that are recycling experts, not garbage haulers that put it in their landfill. It's like the fox watching the hen house. I recycle. I even brought in one great big bag, as an alderman laughed and giggled, because the bag is as big as this dais right here.
Mary, 30 seconds.
30 seconds, great, because I'm going to take them all. And then I brought in a little tiny bag that was a trash bag. That goes out once a week. My recyclables go out once a week, and my trash goes out once a week. So to be more than that, you either got to be very, very dirty or very, very clean. So I don't think we need to have our recyclables and our trash picked up twice a week. When they come to get mine, there's nothing there. It's empty. Why? Because I recycle.
Thank you, Mary. Next, we have Betsy McMullen, Pin Oak Drive.
Fix the flag, please.
Hello. I'm not really very good at this, but I had something I decided I wanted to say tonight. I was at the workshop held last week for all the city leaders, and it was great questions and great points made by everybody who was at the meeting. I want to show appreciation to all of the aldermen for working for the good of the city. I understand how each ward has their own concerns, and the aldermen have a duty to voice and work for their constituents. If we don't consider the city as part of this, as the whole thing, we end up with a 10-2 vote. We get two wards, and if everybody doesn't work together, everybody's going to vote something down. Committees and cooperation are very important within city workings. I'm nervous about this because you wouldn't believe what I went to get here.
They just want to hear what you have to say.
I know. Well, I know they'll be patient with me. It's short, but I was prepared here. So, back to the workshop. Impact fees were discussed and of interest to everyone there. We talked on impact fees for almost an hour. The study commissioned by the city was explained. There were lots of questions that followed. Many were regarding specific city services and how they would get their share of the impact fee. How the impact fees would be divided seemed to be a question. A gentleman from Franklin spoke about how they handle this in Franklin. Now, Franklin is larger, of course, has higher property values and higher prices for their homes. They have Cool Springs shopping area that brings income into them, and they're located right on I-65. And they're not built out. They, quite naturally, have differences in the way they run their city and disperse their funds, as we're much smaller. It was my understanding that they don't divvy the money from impact fees around when they receive them, but they have several large pots that the money goes into, and these are earmarked for different services. And tell me if I'm wrong. The infrastructure would be one, the parks, fire, police, etc. They would all be in a large pot. These funds are not transferred to a different pot unless there is a great need for the city in another area. Then they could come out of one pot into another one. This is what I understood from the gentleman. I don't think he was a councilman or an alderman. Anyway, the gentleman from Franklin realized the difference in the cities, mostly due to size, but had many good points and advice that could be used for our city in the future. We're growing fast, really fast, and the impact fees will be gone when we're built out. Please consider meeting again on the issue of our impact fees and get the advice of Franklin and someone else with experience and knowledge. I don't think we're ready to say go with that plan that was introduced to us the other night. We're not ready for that. There's got to be more discussion and more plans set up. There's got to be, whether it's another open meeting or what, there has to be more discussion on it. Please consider meeting again.
Ms.
The
Malone,
issue of
30
our
seconds.
impact, pardon?
30 seconds.
Oh, it took longer than I thought. Impact fees and getting the advice of Franklin and several other people. We may need to plan this out very carefully. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Ms. McMullen, thank you. Next, we have a Finance Committee report. Chairman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. The Finance meeting met, we were delayed because of the capital projects meeting, so we had to defer a few items. Ordinances, Ordinance 2019-2 appropriating $264,500 for traffic signal on Center Point Road. We had to defer to the next meeting because we had some discussion that needed to take place on that and some fact-finding. Ordinance 2019-3 transferring $15,000 in the Parks Department from the Wi-Fi in the Park project to a new line item titled Lighting Detection System Project and appropriating an additional $8,685 from the general fund, passed unanimously. Ordinance 2019-4 appropriating $1,348.05 donation from the Civitan Club to the Parks Department was passed unanimously. Ordinance 2019-5 establishing a 2.75% hotel motel tax. We also deferred that to our next meeting. New ordinance 2018-8, which is part of our Boma agenda tonight, transferring funds to provide additional funding for construction of the fire hall number 2 from the fire pickup truck line item, $40,000, plus the pickup, transferring another $40,000 from the fire department computer budget for a total of $80,000 that's on our agenda, was passed unanimously. Resolution 2018-73 establishing codes permit fees was also deferred to our next meeting. Resolution 2019-1 transferring $20,000 for tennis restroom facility renovation project in the parks. That was a neutral effect on the budget, and that was just a transfer from one line item to another in the parks, was passed unanimously. Resolution 2019-2 to enter into a lease agreement with Smith Turf and Irrigation for parks equipment was passed unanimously. Resolution 2019-3 to enter into a lease agreement with Turf Tank for robot paint machine was also passed unanimously. Resolution 2019-5, intent to use balance of funds from the golf course parking lot project was passed unanimously. Other items, update on Assistant Finance Director's position. Ron had 5 candidates. 3 of them, of the 5, have agreed to an interview for tomorrow. And so that's good news. The sales tax analysis report is unavailable because the state has not posted the information as of 1/17/19. And that's the end of my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that, Chairman Cunningham. Chairman Sprouse, General Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. The only item on the agenda not previously reported by General Committee is Ordinance 2019-1, and General Committee recommended that. Our next scheduled meeting is for February 12th, but I'd like to meet with the members of the committee as soon as possible tonight, if we could, to discuss a special called meeting, either to replace or supplement that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Sprouse. Chairman Brown, Public Safety.
No report, Mayor.
Appreciate that. Public Works, Chairman Skidmore.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. We indeed had our meeting tonight at 5:30.
and it was rather lengthy, but we were successful in completing it. One of the first times we've done it in quite some time, so I appreciate my fellow members of being so supportive in running through these things that we had. We had about 12 items, but the only ones that I really want to talk to you about tonight, as Vice Mayor Cunningham had alluded to, a lot of the parks issues tonight, Resolution 2019-1 and 2 and 3 and 4 were all parks issues that we passed unanimously into the board that Alderman Cunningham has already discussed. A couple of things I do want to talk about to the board that was sent on to Finance, and I know they're going to do a little more further study on it, but our Public Works Committee went on and passed unanimously in support of was Ordinance 2019-2, and that's dealing with 386 and Centerpoint Road ramp signal contract. And what that means is we support the contract for the city. It's going to help alleviate a lot of the traffic down there in the morning and the peak hours of the city. The project alone is going to cost about $265,000. It's actually like a three-phase contract, a three-phase project, if you will. The first two phases of the contract, the federal government has part of the phase, and the other part is the state, and then the last phase, which we are in charge of, which always deals with money, that's us. So we will be coming back at a later date to discuss it even further, but we would ask, once that comes to the board, that we would ask for you all to approve it. It's desperately needed for what I would consider our side of the town in Hendersonville, even though we do represent everybody. But that red light down there is used basically in Ward 1, 2, and 3. And so we desperately need that in the peak hours of getting on to 386 and making that massive drive to Nashville and back every day. So that will be coming forward to you. And I apologize, Vice Mayor, that Public Works was not there this evening to go a little further, but we were all kind of had a lot on our agendas, so we weren't able to normally come to your meeting and explain that. The last thing I do want to talk about is the red light at Stop 30 in Main Street. That's one we've been working on for over a year. We want to let you know that we sent the contract to the contractor so he can sign the contract and get it back to us so we can start on that red light there. We're waiting for I guess the thing to be called is we're waiting for the execution of the contract by the contractor. So that it looks like we're going to be trying to get that done this year, as well as we're going to be pushing to get into the red light down there at Centerpoint Road. We just don't really know when that was going to be at this point until we get it here to the board, and then we'll be able to discuss it further. I do want to say that we did some other discussion, which I'm going to be bringing back, and that is about the crosswalks and the sidewalks on Walton Ferry Road, and also the Wessington Drainage System Project. I want to let our fellow colleagues in Ward 6 who do really wonderful work down there, that we're going to go to that one particular address and take a look and see what we can do to help that young lady and her problem on about her drainage issue, and we look forward to doing that. And I think that Marshall and Public Works staff is going to go ahead with that and give us a report back if we can expedite her issue. Other than that, Mayor, we completed our business, and onward and upward. We're moving.
Chairman Skidmore, thank you. Chairman Campbell, Capital Projects Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had 3 items on our agenda this evening. We got through one of them, which was additional funding for Fire Hall number 2, as you've heard from the Finance Department. I'd like to thank Chief Bush for stepping up and taking the funding for the truck of $40,000, and also $40,000 from a line item for computers for his department, and coming up with $80,000 for the continue this project moving forward. I'd just like to thank you, and we do need to put those items back in next year's budget for him so he can get these items taken care of. Saying that, we also had a lively debate regarding contingency funds for the future and how to pay contractors and how to separate those from building funds and contractors through professional services, and we're going to work that out moving forward. We have several capital projects moving forward, and in the future, I hope that we have a smooth transition to where line items are clearly defined, and we can keep that straight. The other two items were Stop 30 Main Street signal, which you've heard from previous aldermen, and then also SR 386 at Center Point Road, the ramp signal there for that, the contract, and we've heard about that as well. So that concludes my report, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Chairman Campbell. Planning Commission, Alderman Woodcock. Appreciate that. Next, we have ordinance and resolutions. We have second reading of ordinance 2018-46. This is an ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title 12, Chapters 1 through 8, our Building and Maintenance Code. Alderman Sprouse.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second. Alderman Sprouse, you want to speak on it?
No.
Okay. All those in favor of second reading of ordinance 2018-46, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have second reading of ordinance 2018-47. This is an ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title 13, Chapter 1, our Property Maintenance Code. Alderman Sprouse.
So moved.
A motion and a second. All those in favor of second reading of ordinance 2018-47, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have second reading of ordinance 2018-52. This is an ordinance amending our budget ordinance 2018-22 by appropriating $54,000 for the Saundersville Road North Infrastructure IMP project. Alderman Skidmore.
So moved. Second.
The motion is second. All those in favor of second reading of ordinance 2018-52, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have second reading of ordinance 2018-53. This is an ordinance amending our budget ordinance, which is ordinance 2018-22, by appropriating $54,000 for the Chute Lane Phase 9 Improvement Project. Alderman Skidmore.
So moved, please.
A motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor of accepting second reading of ordinance 2018-53, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have first reading of ordinance 2019-1. This is an ordinance closing and relocating a portion of the street right-of-way of Circle Drive, which is located here in Hendersonville. Alderman Woodcock. A motion is second. Okay. Alderman Skidmore.
I hate to put you on the spot, Alderman Woodcock. Can you give me a little information on this particular issue?
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Woodcock.
On page 39, you'll see an illustration of what we're changing. This property had a circle driveway, which obviously would remove a lot of lots. So we're changing that to a one street with a cul-de-sac, as illustrated on page 39 of your packet.
Alderman Skidmore.
Excuse me. Gotcha. Thank you.
All those in favor of accepting ordinance 2019-1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have resolution 2019-4. This is a resolution accepting the dedication of completed streets in Durham Farms, Phase 1, Section 1 in Hendersonville. Alderman Woodcock.
Second.
A motion is second. Alderman Brown.
Just a question. I know we've been in transition the last week or two. Has the city engineer, who is now the interim director, looked at those?
Yes, sir.
You have? Okay, thank you.
All those in favor of resolution 2019-4, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have resolution 2019-8. This is a resolution transferring funds appropriated in ordinance 2018-22 to provide additional funding for the construction of Fire Hall Number 2. Alderman Sprouse.
So moved.
I have a motion. Alderman Robertson. A motion and a second. Alderman Robertson.
Yes, I was in capital projects and heard some of the discussion, but can someone explain, there are two change orders that we are transferring money to pay for. I know one deals with the concrete slab that was put in by the staff is not meet the standards now to build upon. Is there another change order?
Marshall, you want to do that, or? Okay, thank you, Marshall.
I just want to make sure that I didn't ask any questions, of course, in the committee meeting, so.
Absolutely. We have one change order now that
Yes.
we have in front of us. Is for the building pad is 2 feet short of where it needs to be. So the dirt that is there now is 2 feet short from where it needs to be. The second change order, which we have not received yet, is essentially an addition to the first one, to where, because of the condition of what is there now, it's wet and it's going to have to be removed and, redone. It's going to be increased to accommodate that work. So that, first one is 2 feet short. Addition to that is to rework the material that is currently in place.
Does that mean you're going to tear up the slab that's there and put a new one down?
Well, when you say slab, there's just dirt. There's no, I guess you can call it a pad, but, the pad that is there now, we're going to tear up and redo. Yes, or the contractor will.
The pad of dirt?
Yes. Yeah.
So they'll take that dirt out and put some other dirt that compacts better?
Yes, sir. Either shot rock or clean dirt. Yeah.
And it's estimated that to do that work will cost $70,000?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is estimated, or less, but that's what we're guessing. We're guessing the cost to rework what is there will be double the amount of change order one, which is $27,000.
And that was contingent in the contract, wasn't it?
The contractor assumed the pad was ready to build on.
Yes.
Yes.
So some tests were done, and it was found that it was deficient, and so these change orders will bring the soil up to standard
Yes,
to
sir.
be able to build upon.
That's right.
Are you aware of any other change orders that are coming down the track on this?
No, that's all that I'm aware of right now.
Was the contract price that Boma approved, did it include professional services along with that, or was that just the Boger construction company, their cost?
Just the contract price to build a fire hall.
So they did not include any architectural fees that would be included in building the fire hall?
That's correct. The cost that Boger provided did not include any architectural fees. If that's what
That's what I'm asking.
That's what you're asking. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's not a lock and key, so-called lock and key job?
No, sir.
So there's possibility that we will have additional charges? Are they only if we submit change orders?
Right. If there's any deficiencies that we're unaware of at this moment, there could be, additional change orders, but we're hoping there's not. But like you said, if there's something we want to change or, something we encounter that is unforeseen, that there may be additional change orders.
So any change orders would have to come back before Boma? Would the committee would Mr. Alderman Campbell's committee be able to?
Well, I think there's a chance that we could have a contingency, set aside in next fiscal year to help with that. But we could certainly bring back, future change orders before the capital projects.
But it's hoped that, because every change order is going to cost more money.
Right.
We're hoping that there won't be any change orders. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, sir. It is. Mm.
So the change orders would come from us, from Boma?
No, it'd come from the contractor and architect. The one we have now came from the contractor. Of course, it came to us to review and then, before capital projects.
So the change orders would come from the architect or the construction company based upon unforeseen circumstances?
Yes.
That drive up the cost?
Yes, sir.
Do you anticipate any of those, just looking at the project?
I think once we get through this first change order, I hope that we're okay, but it's hard to, hard to foresee the future. But I don't anticipate any more, but I can't be for certain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Robertson. Alderman Campbell.
Yes. Since referring to capital projects, I had the copy of the architect right here. The change order says remedial site work was unsuitable soils was $40,000. Mass rock is $25,000, and then trench rock is $5,000 for a total of $70,000 to answer that question for you. And then they had the base bid, they showed that remedial site work in total is $3.745 million. And I have, if you'd like to look at it, here's a contract, the copy of the contract, and there's a contract for Cassidy Architecture, and there's also a contract for the building of the building, two separate issues, two separate contracts that we have went into for this. So in the future, that's why I said, moving forward, we're going to have several capital projects, and if this is the case, then we need to have the contractor, fund for that, and a separate line item for the architectural or administrative fees, professional services, and that's where it should come from. But unfortunately, our professional service budget, Marshall, do you know how much we had in that budget? By chance, $50,000, I think, maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to guess 50,000.
That's what I was thinking. It's about
Yeah.
$50,000,
Yeah.
and it's way short. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on a few of the dollar amounts there that are in this document here.
Hold on we've got Alderman Petrelli next. We'll come back to you, Alderman Petrelli.
Did the junior alderman in Ward 6 have another question? Did you want to ask another question?
I guess in construction that I've been involved with, I try to get kind of a lock and key job, where that all of the costs are included. So when we vote here, we're not surprised by additional costs. So I would hope that as we move forward on these projects, that we try to get as an inclusive price as possible, so that we know up front, what the total project cost will be, including architectural fees. I know there's always extendancies that happen in construction, but I just think it would be helpful if we could possibly try to get a better grip on the entire cost of the project as we move forward on new projects. Thank you.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, to the junior alderman's question in Ward 6. So this has become a very long, drawn-out process for this. I think we're on month 17 or 18. If we had followed the appropriate bidding processes in February, March of this time last year, 2018, we would be looking at a $3.3 million building to build. And then you've got your vendor costs outside of that. But because of the delay of time that we had and the cost of construction went up, we looked at the cost of the building becoming more expensive. Because the city did not budget for a contingency, and in every building project, even a house, even a storefront, there's a contingency that you put in, a financial padding, like your retirement funds, to pay for any unforeseens, oversights, or underestimates. And so because we did not plan for a contingency, that already put us in the hole. With a specialty building, you look at 10% contingency. Out in the county, because when they're doing school buildings, they're looking at a 3 to 4% contingency, because they're cracking those buildings out all the time with similar vendors, and they've got it down to a science. But because we not only didn't plan for a contingency, and because for whatever reason, our vendors, meaning the architects, some site work, some other vendors were paid out of the actual building fund, it took that money away from the building, so that we are now in the hole instead of using professional services line items to pay for the vendors. But regarding the change orders, those are all generated by the contractor. They come into the architect, and then the architect presents them to the owner, which is the city. And in this case, we'll say that our engineer, interim public works director, Marshall, is our contact. So we are under contractual obligation to answer a change order in approximately 10 business days. When that first change order...
Hold on one second. Alderman Petrelli, anything else?
When that first change order came in on December 26th, and we did not turn that around in a timely fashion, we have essentially delayed the project by a month now, because now we're at January 22nd. So change orders are an inevitable, I mean, you asked the question, so I'm answering it. Change orders are an inevitable part of the building process, and there's just not going to be 1, 2, 5, or 10. There will be several, which is why I recommended in the Capital Projects Committee that the city needs to budget for the contingency, or we're going to be consistently trying to fill this hole where it was not planned for. Also, we have to replenish the $352,000 that were already spent. Is it 250 or 320? Approximately.
You could say 320.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the approximate 320 that has already been paid out to date in vendor services, that takes away from the cost, takes away from the money allocated and is needed to actually complete this building project. So we need to not only replenish that money, but we need to plan for the contingency of the overages, unforeseens, but the city didn't budget for civil in the bidding package, which is what got us into this situation to begin with. And like I said in the Capital Projects Committee meeting, we've got 2 more firehouses that we need to do. In one season, and this is going to take some planning on behalf of Boma, in one season we need to, in one budget cycle, we need to plan for the A&E services, meaning architects and engineers, to actually do the construction documents so that we can get a proper estimate on what it would cost to do the building. And then in our next budget season, come back the next year and actually release the bidding documents so that we can have proper budgets for both sectors. Because the amount of time that we have spent since 2017, we should have a building coming out of the ground right now. And every month that we delay this process, it is costing the city money. And that results in the situation that we deal with today. Thank you.
And I've got Alderman Campbell next. We'll come back to you. Alderman Campbell.
Yes, I was just reading over the resolution here, and I just noticed in our meeting, we just talked about transferring the funds and appropriating $80,000, but we also wanted to have included was the mayor to meet with city staff to address the cost savings, if any, are available and are cost effective. So I wonder if we need to add a line on of that information into this resolution, or how do we want to handle that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that should be a separate resolution. The concern tonight was the immediacy and the urgency of this, so we can get this document signed tonight and move forward. That
Yes,
other
sir.
work is not going to happen tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Alderman Robertson.
No further questions.
Okay,
I appreciate the junior alderman from Ward 1 provided me that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Woodcock.
2 questions. So I agree that most projects have a built-in allowance for overages or whatever you want to call them. I guess my question is not one person, either on city staff or a member of this board, caught that. I knew it, and I just assumed that was taken care of, so that's my excuse and my coming clean, so I apologize for that. But what scares me is we have to rely on professionals that do this day in, day out, and not one person out of any employee caught that. Why is that?
I did. I was
I'm not blaming you. You're just the one standing there.
I wasn't involved in the process to appropriate money for this project or the setup, but I'm not sure. I mean, typically it is. All other projects we've done, it is accounted for. So I'm not sure
it's
why.
more like this one was removed more so than just left out. If all the other projects automatically come with it and this one project didn't.
I mean, I know, for example, like our TDOT projects, our road projects, I build that into the budget for, different phases, and we know what everything costs. For this, I'm not sure. Like I said, I wasn't involved with it, but I'm not sure why it was, left
Okay.
out.
Second question, the 10-day turnaround time on the change order, who sets that? Because obviously we don't meet, whenever.
It's in the contract documents that we signed. It's specified in there that we had 10 days to review change orders.
So maybe in the future we could maybe extend that, because we don't meet So we have no choice in how many days. So we just have to have a special
Take
call
this one,
meeting for a $20,000 change.
We got back to them within, God, I mean, they knew as soon as they were sent it to us that we have to have appropriated money before I can sign anything. And so we got back to them. We answered them, but the answer was, and they knew this because our contract told them that we cannot obligate ourselves, that I cannot obligate ourselves to spend more money than the board approves. And they know that takes time.
May I clarify change
Hold on one second. Alderman Woodcock. Okay. Alderman Campbell.
Yes, moving forward, that's why I was saying that Alderman Senior Alderman for Ward 5, yes, I agree with you that for future capital projects that we need to have, if we're going to have two separate contracts, we need to have two separate sources for funding those contracts, and it needs to be spelled out to where we have line items here. I would hope that we'd have good communication from our executive level down to our directors of our departments, so we can have good communication on where these projects are at. And it gets back to the bidding process and the purchasing process that we go through here in the city of Hendersonville, because we've had to bid this out twice, and we've had issues with this project from the get-go. And I agree, we've got some room for improvement, and I'm going to be doing the best I can to help improve the situation moving forward. One other thing I'd like to do, I'd like to offer an amendment that to this right here, that we'd put the mayor to meet with city staff to address the cost savings, if any are available and cost effective for this project. I mean, it's just going to be a line item amended.
I'll second that.
Hold on here. We've got a motion. What's your motion?
That the mayor meet with city staff to address the cost savings, if any are available and cost effective moving forward.
Okay, I got to tell you, I've probably done that 5 times in the past month.
Well.
So, we got a motion and a second.
When we asked in our meeting, we didn't really get any answers on that. That's why I was coming forward with asking.
Yeah, I think you got a lot of answers on that, to be honest with you. So, and I
A
don't
lot
know
of
that
arguing, but not really
excuse me,
answers.
And I don't, and I said I was happy to do it. In fact, I turned around right then, talked to Chief Bush, talked to Marshall, talked to some other folks. Absolutely happy to do that. Does anybody want to speak on this amendment?
I do.
Alderman Strauss.
I'd like to thank Mr. Campbell for offering the amendment, because what it does is it makes the resolution match what was recommended unanimously by the Capital Project Committee not too long ago, earlier this evening. And I offered that proposal to Capital Projects, and it really is a twofold. It's one, to say, let's, the first part, which is what's on paper, which is to say, let's immediately fix the situation we're in right now. And then the second part is to say, let's take a formal step to make sure that we can minimize this situation from happening again. That if there is any sort of other change order, that the procedure that comes to us is a proposal from mayor and staff that says these are some feasible, and when we say feasible, we mean legally, economically, and engineering. There may be something contractually we can't do. There could be something contractually we could do, but the engineering doesn't work. There could be engineering that we could do, but we end up spending more money than we would save money in the long run. But just something that the next time we come through, we're not pulling money out of other line items if there is another option available. And I think that it would be an appropriate spirit for a motion, for a resolution that came out with a 5-0 recommendation out of committee to be on the agenda tonight, that resolution matches what that recommendation was, and Mr. Campbell's amendment would do that.
Hold on one second. I don't know that matters either. Anybody else on this amendment? Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. I respect the maker of this amendment. I can appreciate why he is making the amendment, but personally, I'm not going to get in the habit of legislating normal, everyday, routine meetings that I hope the mayor is already having. And I don't want to get in a situation where every time we make an action in this board, we have to come back and say, now, Mayor, we want you to walk down the hall and have a meeting about this. And that's what I feel like this amendment is saying. And I feel like if it's approved, the very next thing we'll see is we had to pass an amendment to get the mayor to meet with city staff about saving money. That's how I'm taking the amendment. That's why I will be voting against the amendment. With that being said, I do hope, and I would assume our mayor would have enough thought to meet with city staff on any cost-saving measures. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anybody else on this amendment?
I would-
Alderman Brown.
Thanks, Mayor.
Like
I want to agree with Mr. Woodcock. However, I will vote for the amendment. The reason I will vote for the amendment is because that is what we passed in capital projects. Might have thought that through better, but that is what we passed and asked put in a resolution. So I don't necessarily think the amendment is one that we want to have to do every time that you think you and somebody need to meet. But I will vote for the amendment simply because that's what we passed in capital projects, and that's not exactly what's sitting before me right now. So.
Alderman Petrelli.
I'm not speaking to the amendment.
Okay. Alderman Campbell on the amendment.
Well, I'd just like to say that with Senior Alderman from Ward 5, I appreciate the gesture, but I know that in the past, after we had the Disciplinary Action Committee meetings here, that there were some issues about having meetings outside staff meetings with employees about discussing issues such as this, and I just want to make sure in the future that whatever it is, it's discussed. So that's where I'm at. So thank you.
I think what you're talking about is possibly some incorrect information you got. Actually, I know it's incorrect information you got. I've met about on this item many times with our current staff, with our previous staff. I got to tell you, when it's a project that's close to $4 million, I spend an awful lot of time on it. And I'm not reluctant to talk to any member of the staff or our consultants or the architects at any time, and happy to do that. I'm going to vote against this just because I hate the precedent that it sets. I mean, what happens if I don't do that? What happens if I don't talk to them in the next couple days, or if I don't get to it before the next meeting? And if I don't talk to the specific staff, what if I go to our architect, or what if I go to somebody else and talk to them and look at other options? That's not likely to happen. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this and talking about these costs for several weeks. And so I have a hard time with the board telling me that what our charter says isn't good enough, and what my duties are and what my responsibilities are. So anybody else on this item? Actually, you're going to have to raise your hand.
But Mayor, we've had conversations in the past.
Hold on. Alderman Campbell.
Yes, sir, Mayor. We've had conversations at capital projects meetings where we asked for recommendations and even set a special meeting and have that conversation, just to be told that whatever this committee comes up with, you'll support it, and then to turn right around and come in this room here and vote against it.
Okay, I never said that. If you can provide some documentation, I would hope you'd have that with you before you say it. Do you have that?
I don't have it with me right this moment,
okay.
sir, but I'll tell you what, I'll go tomorrow, I'll come in here and I'll go back to Public Works, and I'll see if they can't pull out the tapes, and we can just go through and listen to them.
I think what I said was a reasonable option, and what we came up with took an awful lot of money away from paving. I didn't think that was a reasonable option. I thought the reasonable options were some of those that I had presented before, and some that I had presented earlier than that. So to say that I haven't presented some cost-saving measures in the past, it just does not hold water. It just doesn't. In fact, one of the concerns I had was the way that we initially bid this out as a design-build project, and turned out that we couldn't do that, and that caused some of the delays.
I agree.
Without going too far into people who don't work for us anymore, I really think that we need to focus on what we're doing in the future and where we are with these change orders. I don't know that we're going to see many more change orders. In fact, I hope we don't. When this one came to me, immediately we started looking at different possibilities and talking with the architect, and I'll continue to do that. And I'm absolutely happy to. So, Alderman Petrelli.
I'm not speaking to the amendment.
Sorry, you hit the button again. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. No. We have to call the roll.
I abstain.
Bolt.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Abstain.
Edwards.
No.
Hayes.
No.
Petrelli.
Yes.
Robertson.
No.
Skidmore,
Yes.
Sprouse,
Yes.
Waters,
No.
Woodcock, Clary.
No. That fails 6-6. We're now on the main motion. Alderman Petrelli.
Okay, thank you. So, to the senior alderman now in Ward 5. And I know I'm being a little bit repetitive here, and I have a tendency to do that when I'm talking about process or best practice. And in construction, it's called best practice, but as our interim public works director, Marshall, stated, we are under legal contract to provide within 10 business days an answer to the change order. That's considered standard practice in construction. And by give an answer, it means you go ahead with the work. It doesn't mean, yeah, we understand we need to have that done, but we'll get back to you in 3 weeks to figure out if we have any money. It means you're ready to go, because most projects typically have a buffer fund, a contingency that folks pull from, and you just move forward. If we continue to delay for each change order, it will delay the project and inevitably cost the city more money in the long term. So how we are handling this might be, I don't have the historical knowledge of going through, of the city having built a building in my tenure per se of this magnitude, but in building construction, this is very peculiar. And I did want to mention that in change order 1 and change order 2, they are contingent upon each other. Change order 1 in overview is essentially site work, bringing in more and removing the top 6 layers of silt because the site sat so long because of the first failed bidding process, which degraded the land.
Hold on one second. Can I ask if that's the case? If it was because the site sat so long? I hadn't heard that before.
I'm sorry, the change order 1?
Change order 1.
That's merely, we're just 2 feet short of there's an elevation the building was going to be built at, and what we had in place was 2 feet below where it needed to be.
Right.
I just hadn't heard what you said. So.
Yeah.
In the change order.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, hold on. We've got a couple people before you,
Well,
Alderman Campbell. Go ahead.
In the change order, they're going to remove the top 6 inches of quote-unquote silt, correct?
Yes, they'll remove that as part
I've
of
got the change order. So I'm going to read the change order.
Yeah.
Complete grading at the building pad only to plan subgrade. Approximately 2 feet of additional fill is required to reach subgrade, and the addition of the area where the elevator is to be constructed has not been completed. This will require benching into the existing pad to structurally tie this new portion of the pad to the existing. Above price includes removal, this is on the actual change order, or no, this is on the RFP. Above price includes removal of approximately 6 inches of material from the top of the existing pad. This material appears to be silty due to length of time pad has been sitting. This is all in the project documents. And the reason why the project sat so long is because of the first failed bidding process. So when we delay change orders and RFPs, it'll ultimately, delay the project. It will wind up costing the city more money, as we've already discovered. So with change order 1, it's essentially in regards to bringing in new dirt, bringing it up to where it needs to be. It's also going to include compaction tests, which the architect will direct the geotech engineers to conduct, and then testing to make sure it passes. The second change order involves civil and structural work. We didn't get a clear definition. Marshall will know when that change order comes in per se, but the contractor already alerted the architect, hey, have your structural guy ready to go. So they're working as fast as they can, but because we have sat for a month on this, it has delayed their work processes, and I encourage you, come up with as I stated in capital projects, with a more efficient change change order process, immediately rectify the issues with how finance is handling payment of vendors out of the actual building fund. Every time a dollar is spent out of that building fund, it depletes it, and we have to redeplete it. To date, we have to put back in $352,000 that was paid out to vendors. And then we have to figure out how we're going to handle change orders. And there will be change orders and unforeseens. That is the nature of construction. Thank you.
John Bradley whispered something here. It's sort of the difference between responding and agreeing. And John, do you want to?
Well, dealing with the government, I mean, we're supposed to respond to change order within 10 days, and we certainly can do that with our staff, but we couldn't possibly respond within 10 days by funding the project with an appropriation. And that's why our contracts typically have language that any change is subject to the appropriation of funds. So you're right that we're supposed to respond within 10 days. We actually received this change order since the first of the year. It was sent by email on January 2nd.
Alderman Petrelli? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And I understand that, but again, a lack of planning on our part doesn't constitute an emergency on their part. I understand all the nuances of this, but if we don't come up with a more efficient change order process because we did not plan for a contingency, I'm going to say it one more time, this will delay the project and it will cost us more money. Thank you.
Alderman Hayes.
Thank you, Mayor. The meeting that we had before the Boma meeting, it was a difficult meeting because no one likes to know that we're going to have some additional costs. But I want to, on an upbeat way, share with you that our Chief Bush, he was passionate about even giving up some of the things that are already approved on his budget in an effort to get moving forward. So go ahead and get the building going. So I just want you all to know how grateful I am for our mayor and for the senior alderman in Ward 2 for willing to come together and come up with this resolution, and for the love of Hendersonville, and I believe they both love Hendersonville. I know they don't always agree, but I believe this is the right thing, and I just appreciate this board for the time that we're spending on this. Nobody wants to see us spend more money, but I appreciate Chief Bush, and I appreciate our mayor, and I appreciate the senior alderman in Ward 2, and I'm excited about us moving forward with this fire station.
I appreciate that, Alderman Hayes. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm glad we had that meeting in capital projects and it went over into my finance time, but that being said, I want to thank Chief Bush, of course. But I think what we were all in agreement about when we came out of that meeting was the need to have a sufficient contingency fund and the need to fund for it in the upcoming budget for change orders and for what we've already extracted from the budget for the building. I mean, it's not going to be pretty, but we're going to be prepared for it. And I think we had a unanimous agreement about that. I mean, we didn't vote on that, but we had discussions about that. And I think we're going to be more prepared for it this year. Thank you, Mayor.
I appreciate that. Alderman Woodcock.
Sorry, John said more or less what I was going to say, but I will call the question.
Okay. We have a motion to call the question. Is there a second to that? Second. Motion is second. We do have one person left in the queue. However, the rules we go by says we have to take a vote. Okay. All those in favor of voting on this item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Just raise your hand. How many no's is that? Because we have to have 2/3. Okay, so that's not enough. Okay. Alderman Sprouse.
Thank you. I appreciate the comment from the new alderman from Ward 5. And I just want to say I can't speak against this resolution as the person who made the motion for it, and I made the motion for it as the sponsor. And first, I want to thank staff for all of their hard work, not just on this issue, but all the issues, and the sacrifices they make to each of the departments and their budgets to make it fit within the greater picture of the city. It's very much a jigsaw puzzle, and it's hard to make the pieces fit. I'd like to thank the board, particularly the Capital Projects Committee, for we have met more than I think Capital Projects has met in any recent time, and have had good consensus and good agreement. And I would like to thank the board. I think we pretty much had almost maybe every alderman in the committee meeting earlier tonight, and appreciate that. The board is having to carry a pretty heavy burden on some of these issues, and I appreciate all of y'all for stepping up to the plate, finding consensus in tough issues. I will support this, but it does not require, but I will say I am dismayed that the goodwill and consensus that was found, that the new alderman from Ward 5 spoke of, was not honored when the agreement that was made of what would come out of that committee was not what was presented to this board. And it is out of the ordinary that Mr. Campbell's motion was made. But that was made because at least once, previous promise on this issue had been made to bring solutions to this board, and they were not there. So it is an extraordinary measure, but it was because of an extraordinary circumstance. And I would think that Mr. Campbell reviewing the record and bringing it back to us would prove that what he said is true. I support this, but I will say my intention is, regardless of us having a requirement in here that the next time this happens that we have something from staff and the only full-time employee, elected official, working with staff to bring us a proposal, there may not be a resolution requiring them to do that, but there is also not anything requiring any of us to support the next time this happens without appropriate due diligence done. Thank you.
All those in favor of accepting resolution, I need to add one thing. Alderman Cunningham should be listed as a sponsor on there. So without objection, we'll add that on there as well. All those in favor of accepting resolution 2019-8, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have a grouped list under other agenda items. First is item A. This is a vote on appointment of Ken Hessen to serve on the Board of Parks and Recreation. Item B, a vote on the reappointment of Charles E. Todd Burnham to serve on the Golf Course Commission. Item C, vote on the reappointment of Dave Lamar to serve on the Golf Course Commission. Item D, vote on the reappointment of Mike Skinner to serve on the Golf Course Commission. Item E, vote on the reappointment of Gene Trammell to serve on the Golf Course Commission. Item F, vote on the appointment of Chris Maynard to serve on the Golf Course Commission. Alderman Robertson. We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor of accepting these items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, I need to let you all know that my little daughter came home and was pretty sick on Friday and Saturday, and apparently she's handed it to me. So I am going to step aside, and I'm going to have our vice mayor chair the rest of this meeting because, frankly, my voice is killing me. So.
He took it.
Oh, you got Carlene's name? You got the original with Arlene's name? Yeah. If you can sign that, we can get that done.
What happened to this chair?
Maybe another month. I'll send that all that out. Go ahead.
I don't know how we can do the whole thing.
Say, I'm open to any comments anyone wants to raise on the issue of impact fees. Thanks, Mayor. If nobody has any comments.
Okay, item G, we're open to, we have an open forum discussion about any questions on proposed development and impact fees. Now, who's in the queue? Darryl? Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. Keith, can you come to the podium, please? And is this going to be open up to citizens as well, or just us?
Just us.
And will there be another public meeting so
Oh.
citizens can ask questions like
My understanding, yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Keith, a couple questions. First, can we build in inflation to our impact fee number? Like for example, our payroll is increased with inflation automatically. Can we do that with this?
I would need to get with our consultants to check that, but that would seem reasonable, but I would want to make sure. There's nothing in the document in the study that they did that refers to that, with it increasing with inflation. but I will check on that and get back to you. Typically, these are things, most cities, once they set them, then they review them every 3 or 4 or 5 years and then reevaluate and up them through that. So I would just need to check to give you a definite answer on that.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
Okay, sure.
When this all began, I was really hardcore pushing impact fees because it sounded like, you know, a solid solution to fix our problems. But no one said that it would kind of hamstring us and tie our hands on what we could use the funds for. The only pro that I can see with having impact fees is that it makes it automatic. There's no negotiation. There's no chance for the board to not impose the same fee or any fee. And of course, looking back, if we had been charging set fees for the last 15, 20 years, we'd be hopefully ahead of the game. You know, who knows? But that is, so far, is the only advantage that I can see outside of hoping the board would continue negotiating a set fee like we did with Forest Park. Can you enlighten me on any other advantages outside of that, in your opinion, from a professional standpoint?
Yeah, I think some of those advantages that you mentioned, having that knowledge, especially from the developer side or investor side, to know what that amount is, especially when you're purchasing property, to kind of know what a defined impact fee could be. It can be helpful, as the gentleman from Franklin kind of shared, with the way that they address that. A lot of times the impact fee, the way it's intended to work is you've got growth going on, so the city is just taking care of growth to make sure that level of service is maintained. And so they're doing all of that, but then they do impact fees to help supplement it.
Right.
But it doesn't really work the opposite way, where you do impact fees and the impact fees are kind of carrying the heavy burden, and then the city just kind of would be secondarily, doing it. So that's something that's just a little bit different. And does that help? Kind of answer
it
that
does.
question? Okay.
And the last question I have, maybe not so much a question, but hopefully you can add some insight. So it's been mentioned about wards kind of bickering over how to split the money and who should get what. If we look at our planning region and where we can grow, there's only certain areas where we can actually have massive development for the remaining portion of our city.
Correct.
And it's not evenly spread or even close to being evenly spread. So if the dramatic growth is going to continue in maybe 2 wards, how would that be beneficial when we cannot use that money for infrastructure improvements in the other wards? Like, for example, can you give me examples of where the impact fee money would be set aside and could be used for a purpose off to another side that is not experiencing any growth because it's already been built out for so many years?
Yeah, it would be with all the areas, because the way the impact fees work, it's not limited to a particular ward or even to a particular area of where the development would be.
But you misunderstood, so I don't want to waste our time. So I'm saying it, and I'm just using an example. I have no idea which ward that this is, but let's say Ward 2 has been built out. So there's no more lanes to be added. There's no more roads to be created. There's nothing. There's no more land to buy for parks. What benefit would that ward outside of police protection would they get?
Yeah, the only benefit, the clear benefit that I could think of, that would be one, would be the increased costs related to growth, just to maintain level of service, not to pay for everything, but just to maintain a certain level of service across the city, that development impact fees could supplement that. And there, in turn, would impact the overall city budget, revenues, expenditures. It would have some impact.
Gotcha.
It's difficult to determine exactly if that would be significant or insignificant, but that would be the clear impact. You're welcome.
Anything else, Tara? Okay, thank you. Alderman Skidmore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cunningham. I think I've been down this road before years ago here on this board, and I wasn't sold on them back then. Because it's a pretty subjective issue with me with impact fees, and I'm still holding my cards close to my chest now on this issue. But I think what Darrell was trying to say, and I don't know if you need to answer it or whether the consultant needs to answer it, but I think he was saying in a way about the impact fees. Can they be used on the roads, the police, or fire? The impact fee in that area where there is no affected growth or issue, where it's not affecting the rest of the city. And that's is that what you just got through telling me?
Yeah, the impact fees themselves could be used in those areas. So for lack of a better example, say we had development out in Ward 5 or in Ward 6, and then that generates a bunch of development impact fee. Depending on how it's dispersed and the projects that we do, a significant amount of those projects could possibly be in a ward that's already built out that actually isn't generating any of the development impact fees. But there could be, an addition to the police station, could be expansion of the police, some things associated with adding additional fire protection that could impact those areas. Parks in general, there could be a park located in an area that's not generating development impact fees, but an area where is generating a lot of those funds could be used in a park that isn't even in that area where they're generating the impact fee. So it's possible.
One of the concerns that I have about the fee is the fact that, let's just say that there's development over in, I don't know, the annexation laws of the state have changed. Let's just say, hypothetical, and they're able to they've come into the city, and the development pays a fee. And of course, Peg and I, we represent Ward 1, which is the oldest district in town, and there's hardly any development left, but there is, we have road problems and drainage problems. But
Rockland Road.
Yeah, Rockland's a real good example of that. And so that impact fee that they're bringing it, or they're paying into the city, that would be able to help Rockland Road.
Yes, it could. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just want to make sure. But if you would, please, I don't know at our next meeting, Vice or Mayor, or not, are we going to, I know you said or somebody did back on this side of the aisle said we were going to have one. Is that consultant going to be here too? That day, do we know yet? At our public hearing or when we vote on?
They can be.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were still here. I thought you were going to see your daughter.
Did you want to speak?
They can be.
Did you want to speak?
No, that's good.
Yeah, they can be. So it just depends on when the board would want to have. I think the last time it was talked about like a separate public hearing, kind of standalone. If it did that, or if it was part of another meeting, then we would just try to get the consultants here for that meeting.
I will say this: I was at both meetings, and I have just a couple more questions to ask, and then I'll be done for the evening. But on these particular issues, because the first time when he came and gave his presentation, I will say, and this is just me talking, it was a lot. It was a lot different than the second time around, and I was going to ask him, and I didn't get the opportunity at our last one why they were different. If I have to, I could probably give him some examples of what I thought was wrong, or maybe he did further research. I don't know. I just didn't get the opportunity, so I was just making sure that he was going to come back when the real deal comes, and we start talking about it. All right. Now, and there was also, and I don't know if you remember this, but there was some discussion about a population growth this last time of 10,700.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So when I speak of that, you're going to be familiar with what I'm talking about. Yeah. How was that 10,007? And I just didn't understand it exactly. How was that arrived at, or at the estimate? Do you remember what he was talking about?
Yeah, I think the way the consultants generated that number was looking at the estimated single-family permits.
Right, okay.
And then just basically basing it on that. So I can't remember. I think it was 320 or something like that, single-family permits a year that he was estimating over 10 years. And then that generated at about 2.5, 2.6 persons per household. So it was just kind of generating, there may be more people than that, but just anticipating what the new homes and new units would bring into the community. But there could be additional where, new people are moving in or larger families are moving into existing houses or something like that. So it's kind of just an estimate to get an idea of what
of his estimate of the 10,000. Do you know, or maybe you don't, he may be the only one that knows this, what are of the subdivisions in Hendersonville, where's that increase of the people living in? Did he ever acknowledge one way or the other where those increases would be?
Well, those would all be in Mansker Farms, Millstone, Durham Farms, Forest Park, and Norman Creek, Fountain Brook, and Ivy Point. So, there's additional ones as well. Glenbrook Village North, and Waterford Village. So those are just a couple of the higher generating anticipated permitting that would happen every year where you'd have new units that be constructed. But those are the main ones. There'd be others dispersed throughout the city, but those are the major ones that the numbers add up to quite a bit.
Okay, and my final question to you that I have for you this evening on this issue is one that, and you may have to do some work to pull this out, and maybe the next time you'll be able to answer it, but you might have it. And as astute as you are, I'm sure that you do.
Let's see if I...
All right. How many lots are in Hendersonville that are in projects that have had some type of approval from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen or the Planning Commission?
I do have that information, actually.
You're the man.
Thank goodness.
You are the man.
I think I have about 3,210 single-family and 390 multifamily condo type thing. So it's roughly, I think you could say, 3,500 units total that have some level of approval. And when I say some level, it could be, there's a preliminary development plan that was approved years ago, or could have been a preliminary plat or something like that, or could be a final plat that's been approved for half of a subdivision or sections, and so that it's across the board. Or a site plan also that it maybe has been approved.
Okay, so that's throughout the whole city?
Yes.
And does that include the planning region and
No.
just everything? No planning?
Yeah, just the city limits. Outside the planning region would be a little bit more possibly.
Okay, all right. That's all I have for him. I do have I have two, or maybe one legal point that I wanted to ask John about, and then I'll be through on this, but I appreciate us doing this evening, if it's okay, but thank you. John, I've got a question for you on this. And I know I'm putting you on the spot. I probably should have called you on this and you could have told me, but according to state law, what point does a development, a project or a development project vests?
I think you ought to ask Keith that question. He's been working with it for the last 2 months.
All right.
He's not discussed it with me. They had consultants on that. I'd be happy to address it if I need to, but.
Sure, okay.
We've got some folks in the audience that would love to address it.
Yeah. The
I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure of that, John.
And I think I kind of touched on it last time when we had the work session, but the way the vesting, we have some pretty clear vesting laws with the state that they mostly sort of cover subdivision development and plats and things like that.
Right.
But they're pretty specific. They don't specifically say, though, that it covers development impact fees. But it wouldn't take much to say that they did. And remember when we talked at the work session, this whole thing about if we do development impact fees, we want to be conservative, and I'm not necessarily saying conservative in the amount of we get per unit or anything like that, but we want to be conservative in how we're saying we're going to spend the money, but also conservative in looking at how we're going to address vesting. Because if we don't tighten up and have some very clear, really very reasonable clear vesting definitions, and we kind of open it up, then, I think we potentially open ourselves up, to be litigated. So the tighter we kind of keep it on what we are saying is vested or what's not vested.
Right.
And I think our consultants, I've talked to them several times about it, and I think their opinion is, nothing's vested unless the city says it's vested. So I think what they've looked at before is, well, if it doesn't have a permit, then, that's not really vested. But again, it goes to the city on how conservative you want to be or how far that you want to go. But definitely, if we tried to not vest hardly anything, we certainly would open ourselves up to developers looking at it like, no, wait a minute, this is covering that, and, we would probably have to prove that that was the case.
Well,
that hasn't clearly been proved exactly about the vesting.
Well, I hate to put you on the spot on this one, but what would you recommend as a planning director?
Yeah, I'm on the spot on that one, but that is on the spot. But I think
it's a very valid question, really. It's a serious issue.
I think it needs to be what's clear and fair, and it would be something that we definitely would have to be very clear about it on what would be vesting. But I think you need to look at it from a legal standpoint, but then also from a general fairness standpoint too, as to what could be. I mean, we've got, on the things that I was just talking about, the 3,500 units plus a bunch of commercial stuff that has been approved in the last couple of years. That totals up to, if all of that had to pay impact fees, then it would be about $18 million. So it's a lot of money if you said nothing was vested, that you could possibly, bring in. But it'd be difficult for me to say what would be that fair test.
Right.
Certainly something that's already gotten site plan approval, definitely looking at subdivisions. Is it got a final plat or has it got a preliminary plat? It gets a little cloudier on plan developments, not residential plan developments, but commercial plan development. So we might have a plan development, but we don't have all the restaurants and the stores that have been built, so it may be reasonable to capture some of those. But then on the residential side of it, it gets a little bit more confusing, mostly because of the state vesting.
Right.
On how far you say that bleeds in to development impact fees.
Okay.
And I know that wasn't super clear, but that's
yeah,
part.
You muddied the water enough for me to.
Yeah. But
I
part
can
of
still
it,
see.
Yeah, but part of it is on this vesting. That's what's really tough on this thing. It's really tough because the less you say is vested, the more money there is. But the more you say is vested, then as far as all this pool of these units I'm talking about, then the less that it is. So it's very difficult to strike that balance, and so that's why it's really difficult to nail it exactly down.
Okay, and my final question, I'm going to roll into two, and then I'll be done. You'll be off the hot seat for me.
He said that 3 times. It's fine.
This is one that I think probably all the aldermen are thinking about it, and it's one that says, can the Board of Aldermen, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, can they determine a vesting point later in the approval process or earlier in the approval process? Can the board do that?
I think the board would have to determine the vesting, but I would think it'd be better to have it earlier in the process than to go back after. Make it clear up front, probably simultaneously as you're adopting something, but you probably, for discussion and everything, there'd need to be some clarity of this is what we're stepping out saying is vested and it's not vested.
Right.
And then as we go through that public process, to do that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your help this evening. And yes, sir.
I just want to say that state law is quite specific on vesting. They've got it's quite detailed statute that we have to go by. So this board doesn't really get to decide what's vested and what's not. State law determines that, and we have to go by that. And to the extent our consultants say that you can say vesting is not until you've pulled a permit, that's clearly inconsistent, in my opinion, with state law.
All right, thank you, John, and thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Alderman Skidmore. Alderman Bolt,
Okay,
your turn.
all right. There you go. Mine?
Yeah, didn't I turn you on?
Off.
Oh, you're
So,
on now.
All right. Yeah, a couple things on the vesting deal, as I understand it. I mean, the way I look at that is a deal's a deal. That ship's already sailed anyway, so I don't think that's an issue that we'd end up doing anything about. I do want to make a comment about my esteemed colleague in Ward 1. I've given him a hard time a couple times about him saying in closing, because he'll do it 2 or 3 times. So I've noticed he's now moved to, my final question is, but he did that 2 or 3 times. So he's slick. He's slick. The other thing, too, my esteemed colleague in Ward 5, I find myself surprisingly in agreement with on a number of comments that he's made. I think we don't have that much to build out at the end of the day. So I think the real question, I think the ship's already sailed relative to fees are going to be charged for developments. So, that's already a done deal. So we don't have that much to build out anyway. So do you do impact fees? Or do you do negotiated fees? If we do impact fees, we don't fix Saundersville Road. So not only are some of those people unhappy because they have a development they don't want, some, well, now they got a road that doesn't work particularly well. So to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm not sold either way. I'm not saying either way. And in that case, that would be accurate, is it not?
Yes.
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 Yeah, that's just
yes. Yeah.
So, so I think that's something that the board will have to look at too. So, each one of these we can negotiate because revenue is still an issue. The other revenue issue, as I see it, and I brought it up at the workshop, is I look at impact fees as a very slow building savings account.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's building over time, and I don't know what the numbers are, but to me, I'm thinking it's a 5 to 10 year lag period before we start solving real problems.
Mm-hmm.
That being the case, well, we still have revenue issues, right? So nobody wants to deal with the revenue aspect of this, but in reality, we still have to do that, and we still haven't solved the Saundersville Road or some other issue relative to that. So do you have any idea how long is that kind of, it's pretty, we don't know, but it's going to take some time before it really has an impact
10 years.
over time, right?
It probably would be, with let's just say we had 300 plus, I'm just using single family permits a year. More than likely, the majority of what's already been approved would be vested.
Right.
And anything moving forward, we
Right.
capture that. So if that's the case, then, what happens is, 2020, out of, just say 300 single-family permits, I guess maybe we get, 20. In 2021, we get maybe 35. In 2022, maybe it gets up to 50. And then eventually, probably about year 7 or 8, we get up to about, we get up to about 200, 220. Eventually, at the end of the 10 years, probably up to now everything except for maybe 10 or 20 would not be vested. So it is a gradual, process that it would have to work itself into. And, the other thing to consider as well is you're considering it is it's gradual on how this is going to work out, and then the amount of actual property that we have, property to develop that's left after all the things we've already got, and if all of that's vested, it's not a whole lot. So by the time we get to that, then eventually it starts kind of working its way, staircasing back down, not because everything's not vested, it's just because we get in the narrowing at the end of development at some point in time.
Okay.
I don't know when that is yet going to be, but it's probably 15, 20 years when we start kind of getting down to that point.
Well, and to the point, I think my esteemed colleague in Ward 1 said is, I sat down 2 presentations too, one back in the fall when I was being appointed, and then now, and I found both presentations different.
Yeah.
So I found one very tight, the initial one, and then this one's pretty flexible, so there's been some conversation somewhere with those guys between that one and this one.
Yeah.
I'll also add that I was in Franklin on business, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I met with the head city administrator as well as the mayor of Franklin, discussed a lot of different things with him while they were there. It was very educational. You know, they run a very good ship. They take no chances. So they're, to your point, they're very conservative. So when the previous presentation that they made, you know, it's pretty clear that you can buy a police car, but you can't hire policemen.
Yeah.
So you can buy a fire truck, but you can't get a fireman. More specifically, you can build a road, but you can't pave a road, repave a road. And to my point in the workshop is we don't have the infrastructure, clearly, to be able to challenge and push the envelope on any of that kind of stuff. We'd have to take it, especially at where we are now, at its most basic conservative level, from just my humble opinion. So I'm not even closing either, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So, and here's a question I had too, and you may not know the answer because we're learning this process, but can you make a distinction between an impact fee on, you know, for residential you don't have one, but you do on commercial, or vice versa?
Yeah, you know, when you look at the study, and if you took out roads, if you took out roads, police and fire, then you wouldn't have anything on industrial, commercial, or office.
Okay.
Or institutional, but, so there's things you could do that wouldn't impact, if you didn't want to impact commercial, but it would mean taking out the roads, because the roads are the big money, you know, it's like, just the roads in commercial is $3,100 per 1,000 square feet. So that's the big number. So if you kind of just, that's the only way you could do that and not impact commercial. Did that answer that? Or?
I think so. I guess my question, and maybe I'm not following it, is we just decide to do impact fees, but just for one or the other. Is that possible?
You could pick and choose.
Okay.
But if you said we don't want to do commercial, then the only way to do that is only to do parks and recreation. Then
I see.
But if you choose parks and recreation and police, then the police part of it has got to be taken out of commercial.
That's probably not going to work.
Yeah, so that's that nexus where it's got to be fair. It can't just be just for residential, but it can be for some of these things that would be on there.
Could you, I'm asking a question because I don't know the answer, and that is, you know, if $4,500 is what they've come up with for a 2,500 square foot house, could you do half impact and half negotiated, or does it have to be one or the other?
Blended.
You could still negotiate, but if you're getting a substantial amount of impact fee, then negotiating on top of that.
That's not what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So if we've decided, so is an impact fee specifically set based on square footage of house?
No, it's just that it's a house, yeah.
So,
it's just that on a unit.
But we can't say, okay, the fee for the house is going to be $4,500. We're only going to charge half of that for impact and half of that a negotiated fee.
No,
Okay.
no. It gets too. Yeah,
I
it
got
gets too
that, and
difficult.
I'm just
Yeah.
asking the question.
It's a good question.
And I'd also say that, you know.
Oh,
those,
and I might explain that just a little bit
all right,
more.
go ahead.
Because remember, where we're doing the negotiated deals, like the Forest Parks, Glenbrook Village, and all that kind of stuff, all that is planned development. The racetrack gas station, where we negotiated for the $50,000 for the improvement to the lights over there, that's all in planned development. Stuff that's just straight zoning, where they're just building a commercial building, they're just getting a site plan and all that kind of stuff, that we don't, there's nothing for us to negotiate on that, but the impact fees they do pick up all that.
I see.
They pick up everything, plan development, straight zoning, but there is no negotiation on straight zoning. It's only on plan development. That doesn't mean if the street needs to be improved for our transportation plan, we require that even on straight zoning, but to get them to pay for something off-site, that's not something you do with straight zoning. You can only do that in plan development, because plan development is kind of a negotiated, so whatever the developer will bear and the city agrees to, then that's kind of the negotiated deal. I hope that kind of clarifies.
No, that does, and that actually helps quite a bit, too. The other issue, too, is, and the Franklin guy, the assistant city administrator, he made this clear, too. He certainly talked about these fees having an impact and helping, drive revenue and whatnot, but he also said there was a shared responsibility of existing residents. It's not just on that. And if we think back 25 years ago, we talk about what a nice town this is and we want it to stop kind of like where it is now. But if you lived here 25 years ago, you might have thought the same, but it wouldn't be this city today, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we need to kind of think about that aspect of how that might work. I don't know this. Those guys would know better than I would, but we're in a rising interest rate environment. It seems to me that we're in a little bit of a slower market, so going back to that same idea, if we're going to rely on these fees to help build out all these different things and continue to fund, we're living and dying by the economy, and we all know that Middle Tennessee is still a place to go to, but it's slowing down. Would that be accurate or no?
Yeah, I think we're slowing down from extremely robust to still robust, but
okay.
But there is a change, but not to my opinion a very negative change. It's just not as super hot as it was. The intensity of the interest for people to live here, invest here, and develop here, it's still very, very high. But those different market conditions could change in the coming years, though, and that would impact a lot of different things. But if we had impact fees, it would certainly have a direct impact on how much impact fees would be coming in, if that slowed.
Okay, and many of us have voted for, development or two. I've only been here a little time, but so we're willing to do the negotiated fee or possibly even the impact fee. Some people that might want the impact fee, they may not vote for anything anyway. So just moving forward, keep that in mind. So if you're trying to convince somebody, it's people like us that might actually vote that way as to what the public and our constituents might want. So appreciate your candor.
Thank you.
You done?
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Are you done?
So thank you.
Okay. Alderman Robertson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Several questions, Keith. For example, one question is the existing agreements that the Planning Commission has reached, like Forest Park, like Durham Farms. Typically, those agreements specify where that money is to be spent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So in an existing agreement, could any of those funds be used in Ward 1 per the agreement?
No.
Ward 2?
No.
And so forth. So right now, we're very restricted by the agreements being able to help in other wards. The second question is, are there new residential developments that you're aware of that are knocking on the door of Hendersonville? I mean, I'm aware of several myself.
Yeah,
but
there are.
There are several residential developments that are interested in Hendersonville. What about an area that wants to build that requires no zoning change? Can you work agreements with those where there's no zoning change and they just go and build?
No.
There's none?
No, no. If there is not a need for a zoning change where you're doing a planned development, then yeah. Other than, you need to improve this roadway that's right along your, but not like 2 blocks up, you've got to fix an intersection or something. So, yeah, there's no negotiation for that.
Yeah. The Boma has several capital projects that Chairman Campbell is working on trying to get accomplished. And we all believe that they're very important, such as Saundersville Road improvement, such as the tunnel or trestle, whatever you call it, among other projects that are very important to this city as we move forward. The reason we haven't acted on them, it's my understanding, because we don't have the money. So would impact fees be able to help fund those capital projects?
They would on the transportation side of it, that list that we talked about, and Center Point Road wasn't on there, and Saundersville Road isn't on there. But the underpass is on there, Rockland Road, the Stop 30, Drakes Creek intersection. There's a couple of others that are on there, but those are the big MPO TDOT projects.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got what our match is. So it can go to all of those, but if a project is not in that grouping, it can't go the way the way the study works and the way the funding is set up. It can only go to those projects. It couldn't go to like Saundersville Road in general or Center Point or that unless that was put on the list. But the way this is set up, it's a double-edged sword. Certainly a lot of projects that need to be on that list, but we put those on that list, then we're committing, we're going to do those projects even if we don't have growth. So all of those projects that we got on there, because we don't have a capital improvement plan that says these are all the roads we're going to do, here's how we're going to pay for them, here's how much it costs, and we're going to do them in sequence over a 5, 10 year period. We don't have that, but if we go adding all the roads that definitely need to be on there, but if we do that, then, man, we're committing ourselves. It doesn't mean it doesn't need to be on there, but then we're getting on the hook financially that we're going to do all these other 10 projects in addition to these really big projects we already have. And then we're on the hook to do that because we'll be taking that money and then we'll be doing projects. And then what'll happen is, 3, 4, 6 years from now, then developers that have written big checks, $178,000, $70,000, $220,000, then they're going to be looking at where has all the money been spent, and you've done these 4 or 5 projects, but you haven't touched these other ones, so now y'all need to step up and do it. So that's kind of the way, it's a double-edged sword with that transportation thing. But on other capital projects that were related to parks or fire department or police department, then the way this is set up, if you adopted the whole thing, it could be used in some of those things.
That was my next question. So the answer is yes. On the capital projects that were mentioned.
Yes.
If as those are worked, Boma could add additional capital projects so that the proportional cost of the developments could help fund. I've never said that it's a magic bullet, but it could help fund the proportional cost that the development. So, for example, Beatty Farms, we've bonded for that park, and a lot of money each year that Boma has to pay. Would impact fees, if we assess the park fee, be able to help fund the bond indebtedness for Beatty Farms?
Well, I think that was something our consultant answered. I think he addressed that, and I'll just kind of recap what he said. I'm not for sure, but what the consultant said last time when that question came up was that if you try to fund something that's bonded, then you've got to take into account that the property owners are paying property tax as well, so you can't double dip. We can't get them for impact fees and then also get them for property tax when we're using the property tax to help pay the bond. So it gets in a little bit of a circular, but it's not that you couldn't do it, it's just that it's going to take a lot of math on each project to figure out the best thing to do. The best thing to do, though, to keep it clean and simple is if you do impact fees, just don't mess it with anything that you're bonding. Just keep it on projects you're just doing, not bonding.
Yeah, that's not
It
what
just gets a
the,
little complicated.
yeah, it's just inconsistent with what the the way I understood the consultant to say.
Yeah.
I thought he said that we could, but.
No, you can do it, but you got to get involved in a lot of math, so you're not double taxing.
And
or
I'm
double
not good at
getting.
math.
Yeah, so it's possible to do it, but it just would be complicated. But then that's something with this, that's something with this development impact fee is whatever we might do, we want to look at the complexity of it too, and make sure it's something we can
So
easily do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, we've been told that we need two additional fire stations. In, I think, various parts of the city that maybe don't have good response times. So could impact fees help pay a proportional cost of those fire stations and the equipment required to man to run those stations?
Yeah, I think it could, and I think the figure was 8,000 square feet or so, 8,500 square feet of fire stations that it could do, which might be one station or might pay for 4,000, was it 7,000? Yeah, well, yeah, that would go to one station. You could break it up, but you couldn't go over that square footage, is kind of what would happen.
So, let's see, I think that, I had one question for the mayor. Mayor, do you have a timetable of, when this matter will be, the public hearing and then a decision before Boma on this?
Not really. One of the comments I was going to make is I'm fine hearing from the audience tonight.
Yeah, I am too. I thought we were going to hear from them myself, an open forum, but that's up to the vice mayor.
Well,
My
no, it's
timetable's
up to the board.
Okay.
The board agreed? Any objection to hearing from the audience?
Can we get all our questions first?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you finished,
Yes.
Alderman Robertson? Okay, thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, Mayor Claire.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Keith, can I bug you a little bit more? Thanks. Remind me again, how much are we getting per lot from Forest Park?
3,500 per lot.
Okay, and with the study that was shown to us a couple weeks ago, how much would we get if they paid impact fees, or if we had impact fees before they came to us?
Actually, I did calculate that. Hold on just a second. Yeah, was it 3.5, 2 point? I think it was 2.8 million.
Okay.
And so I think we got 2.1, almost 2.2 million, and then right at 2.8 million would have been if it was development impact fees.
Okay. So if we have the impact fees in place before they came to us,
Yes.
it would have been 2.8?
That's correct.
So if Beatty Farm had developed with straight zoning,
Yes.
we would have gotten, am I correct, nothing in impact fees?
Yeah.
If we had impact fees in place, 4,400 times 90?
So 360,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think about 360,000.
Okay.
350, 360,000.
That was better math than I was able to do that quickly.
I may be wrong. I'm just saying it confidently because.
Well, 4,400 versus 0 times
Yeah.
90, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. And if we have the 4,400, and this was discussed a couple weeks ago, if we have the 4,400, we can still negotiate if they want to provide amenities that are beneficial for the whole community. They may pay a lower rate overall, but the benefit has to be at least what we anticipate is worth $4,400 or more. Is that the way, did I hear that right? They can still provide amenities inside the subdivision.
Yes.
Now
they may say like what the gentleman from Franklin said,
Credit.
which they
Yeah.
would.
Credit, yes.
Yeah, they'll do the credit, so developers are very sharp, and they'll figure out, like today, we can get a park or a neighborhood park in a subdivision, and that's just a part of the amenity. But if you can get a credit, then they can do that. And it's not something like the consultant said last time, I think, that the park has to be a city park. It just has to serve all the citizens, so yeah.
And we get to decide how much of a credit they get for that, is that right? Or is it planning commission?
Well, there needs to be a clear plan on so it's consistent, so they know what it is. So it has to be outlined. But what'll happen is you'll get developments, they'll figure out how to do the credits, and then the credits will help. You'll end up with development driven by the credits and working around or trying to minimize the impact of impact fees. Does that make sense?
But all of that, if all of that happens, still, the minimum we would expect from each lot is $4,400. Or a benefit of $4,400 plus the money we get from them.
Well, but if you're getting the 4,400, then certainly you could, on planned developments, you could, not straight zoning, but on planned developments, you could negotiate above that.
Good point, okay.
But, you know, once you're into 4,400, then trying to negotiate on top of that and getting some amount per lot, I think it would be very difficult to do, and I think the development community would be like, okay, you know, just tell us what it is.
Just
is it 4,400 or is it 5, whatever it is, but to have it 4,400 and then it's going to be undetermined, and we're going to negotiate that and maybe put another 3,500 on it, then I think that'd be challenging.
So they could offer to negotiate for planned unit development, but it's not likely.
Yeah, I would say it would be difficult for them to do probably on a per lot basis.
Gotcha. Okay, and the only other thing was that I was just going to say I'd be fine hearing from other people here.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have two more people in the queue. Alderman Sprouse.
Thank you, Mrs. Vice Mayor. I think one of the best things that we've had so far of this discussion is how much just straight up information that we've been able to be presented to the board. And hopefully these discussions can help our constituents to understand some of the concerns. Impact fees, saying you're in favor of impact fees is a very good campaign slogan because of just the general public perception of what they are and what they can do. And I think that I've found out in the last 3-4 discussions we've had about them that they're not everything. I think the term's been used, magic bullet, you talk about magic pill. And I think that's very important that when we discuss this, that we recognize that while it does bring value, that we have to be very careful about what type of value that we have and how we feel. We'll give you an example. How do we feel about our deal-making abilities with current and future development based upon past practices? An example I use, the Industrial Development Board owns a piece of land, and they lease out a cell tower on that land. And last year, a company came and said, how about if we just buy it from you? And the Industrial Development Board looked at it and they thought, well, that's a pretty good chunk of money, but they realized that over time, it's going to hurt them. They weren't in a immediate need for cash, but they did see the value that do they take a pot of money right now, or do they take and perpetuate the full volume and keep getting that? And that's the deal that they had to make. And that's kind of what we have to do, is we have to decide, can we negotiate deals that are more specific to the needs of the development, the surrounding community, and the city as a whole? I'm not saying that impact fees may not be a safe time. There are some times when I look at an interest rate, I say, lock me in. And there's sometimes I say, give me a variable rate. It just depends on what we think the market's going to be. We've heard some comments about potential downturns in growth and downturns in the economy and raise of interest rate, but let's just talk realistically about where we are in Hendersonville as a market. We have seen the past few years Middle Tennessee being an absolutely red-hot market. But we're looking at still about 2% growth year over year in Hendersonville. We've had the majority of what you see being built this year and last year were things that were approved in some cases a decade ago. And so the question is, what do we have in the pipeline? What can we put in the pipeline? And we are growing much more slowly than surrounding communities. And I think last year even Mount Juliet passed us as a community in overall wealth, which raises another question when you're dealing with deal making. If I was selling a car and I had someone say, I really, really want that car, I've been looking for 5 years for one and they very rarely come on the market, I'm going to feel pretty good about it. But if I know there's 20 other people selling the exact same car,
I'm not going to have the same negotiation ability. And that's where we are in Hendersonville, that we've seen if people, if it's too difficult to do something in Hendersonville, they go to Gallatin. If it's too difficult to do something in general in Sumner County, they'll go to Wilson County, Rutherford County, Williamson County, have access to the same markets. And that's what we have to be concerned about whenever we do these things, because we talk about, well, can we make someone pay this? Can we make someone negotiate that? We can offer that. We can offer, here's our package, here are our impact fees. They don't have to accept them because, with the car analogy, we're not selling the only car. They can just go to the other lot. So we have to make sure that we always maintain the competitiveness, because no matter how aggressive the impact fee is or how aggressive our expectations are in negotiations of those fees, if we ask too much, then no one comes to knocks on our door. And I think about, this is a city that I've been very proud over the years to say that we are not one that gives a lot of concessions or offers a lot of incentives in industrial development or economic and community development. Our director of ECD is here. He has not come to us and say, hey, can you waive property taxes, or can you build this, or will you make this cash so we can get this type of business to come in here? And that's good, because the businesses that come in pay property taxes. There's a residual effect that goes on in their employees and what they do. But the most important thing is it gives us that ability to negotiate. Instead of giving things away to overcome an impact fee, we're able to negotiate true value. And I would want to take away one more tool from him. And there is some concerns about restrictions about where money can be spent. And maybe we can't negotiate when we did with Forest Park. The negotiation there didn't generate revenue that could affect Ward 2 or Ward 1. But it will ultimately in the long term, because projects that we have to do are going to be funded, and the money that would have gone there are now going to go and repave roads and do improvements. But I will give a couple of examples of things that we do, and I don't remember how long ago it was, but we had a rather large commercial development proposed. And one of the concerns was we didn't have appropriate fire apparatus to service a property that large. We negotiated to where the person who was building the property helped purchase that apparatus with appropriate aerial access. That's a mobile asset. It doesn't matter if the 3-story building is on fire in Ward 4 or Ward 5 or Ward 6. And in most cases, we're not dealing with height, but if you think about with a ladder, it's depth. Imagine trying to fight a fire in the middle of Walmart. And that's why you have to have the length there. That's a mobile asset. That's something we were able to negotiate. I think there's something that we can do, and there's some value here, but as long as we recognize it's not a magic pill or a magic bullet, and that for everything that it gives us in value, we have to worry about what we're giving up. I'm really glad we're having these discussions. I hope we continue to have them, and we can come to some decision that's best for overall for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Sprouse. We have 2 more people in the queue. Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. I'll be quick. Keith, I'm sorry. Do you mind coming up? What was the last property that was developed under straight zoning, residentially? Or when?
Probably those 14 units. Remember the zone change behind Sonic? I think it's Clubhouse or something is what it's called. Those 14 single family, but it was it was rezoned to multifamily.
Right.
That probably was the last one. We had Eagle View, which had 11 units, but probably that one is the one I can kind of think of. There is Waterford Village though. So
where's Eagle View? Which one's that?
Eagle View is actually, we annexed it in. It's out in New Shackle Island Road.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Waterford Village is, we did phase 4 of that just last year, I think. Approved that, and that was straight zoning.
Okay. All right,
I think it's multifamily zoning. But.
All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Bolt.
I'll start out with in closing, because it'll be quick. So, Hey, now, Jim, I never talk, man. Come on. On the Forest Park there, the actual land that was given as part of that negotiated deal, that would could end up being a credit if it was an impact fee.
Yeah, it would be a
Okay.
credit.
What was the value of that, do you recall?
Well, they didn't really get on it. It was about I think it was about the same size as the Beatty Farm property.
Okay.
You know, and it was somewhat similar to the hilly portion, not the flat. So I think that was, I don't know, I think they were
That's
talking
fine.
about $1 million.
Okay,
I guess
so
is
it
what it was.
kind of knocks down quite a bit
Yeah.
there, but, and to your point too,
I didn't hear what he
those
said.
developers they're pretty shrewd, pretty slick, so they'll come up with some good ideas that may or may not. Do we have to accept? Don't have to accept, right, as in-kind credit?
It just depends on how we write the thing about how we do credits.
Okay.
But again, if we did it and we had credits, it needs to be fair. The policy can't be
Right.
overly restrictive where they can't get these credits, so.
Okay.
But I haven't talked about that with our consultants, so I'm not,
Okay,
I just know whatever we'd have to do something, and it would have to be reasonable and fair. It couldn't be ultra restrictive, I don't believe.
okay. And on the second point, I probably defer to Alderman Sprouse on this, and that's, when we're talking about on negotiated fees, it doesn't go to another ward. It might not go for fire station, whatever, but in reality, it's revenue that we might have spent anyway on that, so it's just shifting to one extent or another, I guess. And then on we only spent $3,500, I guess, or requested or negotiated $3,500 on the Forest Park, because the impact fees were not, something that we're that far down the road on. But technically, if we wanted to, we could just decide arbitrarily, moving forward, everything's $4,500, same as an impact fee. So if we can do whatever we want relative to that, right?
If the developer agrees with it and the city agrees with it, then
Okay.
then
And on
it could be.
on the no impact fee on something that's not rezoned, I think that's probably the biggest sticking point for me, really, that being it. But I'd add maybe to Darrell's point, how often does that happen? That something's not rezoned. I mean, how often? I don't know the answer to that question, is why I'm asking it.
Yeah, typically, most of our significant developments and what we're all used to, it's all planned development, but we've gotten so used to it, we expect planned development, but more and more developments have been looking at doing straight zoning.
Okay.
And that's one thing, I think, looking at our zoning ordinance, and we've got some different changes that we're going to be suggesting to the Planning Commission that'll be working its way to Boma. And some of those are to make it more attractive and encourage more planned development, therefore encouraging more negotiation on some of these different things, but not necessarily making it easy to get a yes versus a no, but at least making the process where it's a quicker time frame.
That'd be good.
Where it's not really much longer than going through the regular process.
Okay. And then on, similar to that, I guess, is you're not getting any funding specifically, or negotiated fees when you're not doing any zoning, but on some of these other projects too, if we committed to something, we're on the hook for that. So in a downturn of the economy or whatever else, or we're not building, we're still paying, we're going to end up paying for that. It'd be interesting to see what that looks like, because I don't know the answer to that question. Over a 20-year period of time, what does that look like? Probably like a stock over a 20-year period of time, it all works out. But I don't know the answer to that question. I will say the Franklin folks thought it was a good idea that we had it, and drank the Kool-Aid on most everything else they said. But I also added that if we had it 15 years ago, it'd make a whole lot of sense. But it's something we have to bring up now. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, I have one comment before I open it up to the audience. I'm trying to figure out the good, the bad, and the ugly. what concerns me is the very restrictive nature of the formula for that. And once we set the formula for that, how strict is it that we have to follow that formula?
Yeah,
And if we don't follow it for everyone, for each developer, do we open ourselves up for litigation?
Yeah, we got to follow it for everybody. So let's just say, take two examples. Let's say there was a nonprofit that was doing something pretty cool that we wanted them to do, but the impact fee was restricted, kind of, they were like, I don't know if we can do this or not, and then the city wanted to waive half of the impact fee. Well, the city's going to have to pay for it. And the same thing with like an economic development thing. If we wanted to do something, it doesn't mean you couldn't offset it, like maybe by doing some kind of tax rebate, but for the impact fee itself, if you're wanting to waive impact fees for economic development, the city would have to step in and fill that void with the amount of impact fees that you'd have to do.
Can I answer that too?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Oh, you're Arlene Cunningham.
And Rod and I have talked about that situation, is if we have, and this is the way that it somewhat happens in Williamson County also, is that if we have an application for something that we really are in favor of and we feel like is going to be a blessing to this community, that we would look at ways that we could do sort of like a property tax rebate. We can't waive those impact fees unless we pay those impact fees. But there might be other incentives that we could provide that would lessen the impact of those impact fees. So we're looking at things such as that, which is our whole incentive package that we're trying to put together.
Especially for the commercial.
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably not for the residential.
Because
or office.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be difficult to do business in the city of Hendersonville, because I hear those complaints sometimes when I'm sitting in my banker chair.
Right.
Okay? Not particularly to planning.
Right.
It could be planning and codes and, other people, but they just don't have I just don't think that their communication was there for them. They didn't know who really to get in contact with. I think that was part of the problem. But besides that, it seems like we have, in your opinion, do we have more negotiation power now versus having an impact fee? Or, could we have a little of both?
Yeah.
What is your opinion about
Well,
your overall opinion
overall,
in our city of Hendersonville, not Franklin?
overall, for the city of Hendersonville, the discussion that we've had, the study that we've had, the engagement that we've had is what brought the level of negotiation from $1,150 a lot to $3,500 a lot for Forest Park. And where we're at on the negotiation part of things, compared to maybe any other community that's not doing impact fees, but kind of negotiating, we're in a totally different world. We're like in the gold medal.
To the good.
Yeah, to the good for what we've been able to work with high-quality developers to get them to invest not only in the community, but invest in infrastructure and above and beyond kind of things is actually, it's unheard of in most places. But I think it strikes to the chord of what's unique, what's special, and what's interesting about this community. I think it'd be very difficult, if not impossible, to work those negotiations in other communities like the city has done, which Boma has been a key negotiator in those negotiations. So, the one thing with doing the negotiations, it does versus the impact fee, we can maybe generate a lot of money over a period of time, but there's specific limitations on how we can spend the money. The negotiation, it can be for whatever we agree that it's going to be, and more than likely is going to do something that's going to benefit the area that's most impacted, which in turn then that's probably something that general fund money would have probably been used for at some point in time. So it indirectly frees up
So
general
it's,
fund.
it sounds like we've raised the bar, and we've more or less created our own negotiated impact fee without having a set formula
Yes.
that we have to abide by.
Yes, it's, yes.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. We have one more person. I have Alderman Edwards.
Yeah, this is.
Sorry, I thought we only had a couple.
I just pressed it a minute ago. John, I haven't read the statute. There's no private act that's required prior to enacting any kind of impact fees, is there?
Our consultants have assured us that we've got the legislation we need.
Okay, so we don't have to go to the General Assembly to get any kind of set amount of impact fees, do we?
Not according to the consultants.
Okay. So really, at any time, we can come and change the amount of the impact fees. I mean, all it takes is 7 votes to.
No, that's the reason you have the study. The study that lasts so many months is so you can justify the fee. So it would take another study you can't just unilaterally change them on a whim or because 7 votes want to do it. You'd have to have another study because it's the study that you use to justify the fee when you're challenged. If you don't have the study, you'll lose the challenge typically.
But it wouldn't, I mean, if it looked like this amount of fee wasn't working, it wouldn't be too monumental to go back and change the amount.
No, you can go back.
Okay. And also, too, I was wondering if we could get a clear, this may be in the statute, I don't know. If we could get a clear understanding of what vesting means, because I'm kind of, I mean, is it clear in the statute what the?
I think it's pretty clear. And these guys that you're going to let speak, apparently, they've got a pretty strong opinion about it.
Well, I know that, but I was just seeing what was in the, if we could get a clear understanding of what the law says of what
There's a
vesting
very
is.
detailed statute dealing with it. And I haven't had to deal with it in several years, but I'd be happy to look at it for you if you want me to.
Yeah, that's a little.
I've not been asked to be involved in this, quite frankly.
I would, I mean, I guess I could read the statute, that's a little above my pay grade, but I would.
I'll be happy to review the statute.
All right, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Edwards. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think those were great questions that the junior alderman from Ward 3 just brought up. John, can you just send us the vesting statute so that everybody's on the same page? Because when you Google vesting, it's going to pull up all kinds of scattered stuff. Just, if you could just send to all the aldermen the statute.
I'll be happy to do that, Mr.
I appreciate it. My second question is, when is our next workshop on this? At the January 14th workshop, it was stated we were having another one. So what's the date for that? Thank you.
Okay. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm asking the mayor. What's his plan for that? We haven't been given
Mayor?
a date.
Oh, wait a minute, let me turn you on.
There you go.
Wait a minute, you're turned off. Oh,
Okay, that's
okay,
fine.
you're turned on.
Yeah, I asked if we want to do that. There's only a couple people said they want to. I'll send it out again to see if people want to do that. Or if we go to a public hearing or what we do. I'll ask everybody if they want to do another workshop.
Was an email sent out asking that? Did I miss that?
No, we did this instead, is that we did this. We'll still do, if people want to do a workshop, we'll still do that. But I know that you said you had some people that wanted to speak that night and weren't given that opportunity, so I figured let's get those people a chance to speak, so we did this.
Okay. Okay, I don't know how we're going to do this with the audience participation. Okay, we need a motion to open it up to discussion to the audience. Do I hear a motion? Okay. Okay. All in favor?
Can I speak on that?
Oh, yes.
The only thing I'd ask is,
Wait a
I
minute.
think they would.
Okay, you're on now.
Okay, is, limit it to 3 minutes, maybe. And can you do it in 3 minutes? So, I can't say any.
Ask how many want to speak.
How many people want to speak?
So, 1, 2, 3. All right,
4?
how about, can I amend that? My own?
Yes.
5 minutes. I'll second that.
Okay,
I'd like to speak on that.
okay.
You don't all say it first.
Mayor?
Yeah, we were told that there are a lot of people who had questions and comments. Let them speak as long as they want to, as far as I'm concerned. I think they'll be considerate of us.
Well, no, what I'd say is give them 5 minutes, and what I would allow, if if the board would, is they can come back up. If they didn't get everything done by the time everybody goes through. So I'm good with that. And if you want to override me as a board, I'm cool with that too. So.
Do we want to have a break?
Yes. Motion for a 10-minute break.
Okay.
We have a motion.
Do I hear a second?
We have a motion on the floor, though. We have another motion on the floor.
Well, I'm sorry.
We have a motion.
Oh, wait a minute. First, we have to vote on the motion to open it up to the audience for 5 minutes?
So
5
moved.
minutes?
Yeah. 5 minutes, so moved.
All in favor of opening it up to the audience for 5 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion passed? Okay, move for the break. All in favor for the break?
Aye.
Okay.
Say we start in 10 minutes, even if somebody's here.
How long is the break? 10 minutes.
Marshall, you might be able to go home.
Sorry. Okay, we're going to open the we're back in the meeting now. We're going to open up the meeting to comments, and they're going to be 5 minutes. And who would like to go first? Could you state your name, please, and who you represent?
I'm John Shealy. I live at 105 Shorecrest Circle in Ward 1. I represent the Home Builders Association in Middle Tennessee. I've worked there for over 30 years. Long time. I guess I just want to start with just some basic things. One is I wanted to thank Alderman Sprouse with the story of the Industrial Development Board not selling the cell tower, and I think that group is made up of super geniuses. Yeah, that's right. They didn't need to know that. They could have. But I really just wanted to talk about a couple things to clear up, and I don't know if clear up's the right word, but sort of flesh out a little further. When you start talking about taking an impact fee and spending it in a different ward, you're still bound by the impact of that development. In other words, if you want to take money, and I'm just going to pick up, let's say Forest Retreat is paying an impact fee. If you want to take that money and use it to improve Rockland Road, you have to prove that those residents are using Rockland Road. Same thing for, fire, it's a little bit easier as they're going all around the city, but you're still bound to show what's called a rational nexus, a rational connection between where you're collecting the money and where you're spending the money. The different plans, there was the plan that they presented in September and the plan they submitted last week. They pivoted a little bit in the sense that they weren't saying, okay, these roads are substandard, so we're going to get them up to standards, and then we're going to increase the capacity and use impact fee money for it. That's normally the way they're done. What they switched to was, okay, these roads are substandard. Let's just say they're 80% substandard, and we just want to make sure that they remain 80% substandard. So you can use it to bring up that capacity of the road, but you're still bound by collecting the money. Whoever you collect the money is causing that increase in the capacity. You can spend it in different wards, but when you start talking about some of these smaller collector roads, it's going to mean I live on Ward 1 and everybody on the peninsula is using Rockland Road to get to the bypass. I don't think anybody's coming down Saundersville Road to get on Rockland Road. You get a little bit of a benefit if you're talking about Gallatin Road, but that's a state route. So I'm not sure what the city's funding requirements are for that. The other thing is the vesting, which we keep bringing up, and I'm so thankful we got an attorney's opinion on it. And I've got the actual statute here. I'm completely comfortable with your attorney's opinion on it. If you want to look at it, I'll give this to you if you want it. I'm sure you've got it. But it's important because you won't collect money from those existing subdivisions that he listed off. It also changes the formula of the study. In other words, when you do an impact fee, you start with, here's the population of the city, and then here's the proposed or the planned population growth. Well, if you've got people in your population projection that live in vested subdivisions, even though They don't live there now. Even though they're open lots, they are existing residents in the eye of the law. They are part of, they're not part of growth. I mean, I know everybody thinks that they are, but once you approved it, you almost have to visualize that project dropping from the sky. So the numbers that the consultant used to figure out, here's the number of, here's your population growth, and here's your existing population, and here's how you do your matching funds, and here's where you're deficient, you've got to go back and say, okay, if we used, if all these current residents are vested, or all these lots are vested, the residents there are part of our current population. So that's something else you're going to have to look at. I can tell you we've had dealings with Tischler Weiss, and they just don't look at Tennessee's vesting law. And there's other states that have even more strict vesting laws, but they just do a straight run of, here's the population, here's what you've been doing every year, and here's where they're going. But when you do in Tennessee, you have to look at where these people are going to live. If they're going to live in a vested subdivision, that changes the formula. And I'm trying to stay way under 5 minutes because it's late. I'll answer any questions, but I just wanted to make sure y'all understood that.
Well, you did good. You have 30 seconds left.
Let's brag on the industrial dome board, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, Gerald, I have to turn you on. Hold on.
Restart is 30 seconds.
Okay.
No, he's got
Go.
limited question.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, you seem well versed in this topic. Have you dealt with this in the past, or is this your first time, and can you explain?
I've worked for the Home Builders Association all around and different, I've been here for over 25 years. I've been doing it in other areas for 6 years. And so I've been dealing with impact fees. What's unique to Tennessee is the adequate facilities tax. But we've been dealing with impact fees everywhere. Probably tell you more than what you want to know. It's interesting because of adequate facilities taxes, which we have in Sumner County. We don't have a lot of impact fees in Tennessee, and we don't have a lot of court rulings in Tennessee over impact fees, so we rely on national rulings that eventually get appealed up to federal court. And that's where the whole rational nexus comes from, and the fact that you've got to show if you're charging a tax specifically to growth, or a fee specifically to growth, there has to be some connection to where you're spending it.
Are you in favor of impact fees?
No, I'm not. I mean, this is more than my 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you this, and I really appreciate Alderman Bolt's comments, is I've lived here for 20-plus years, and when I moved here, I had to pay my property tax, my sales tax, my wheel tax, all those taxes, and the city fathers had it worked out where as long as I paid my taxes, they'd bond up and they would pay for my infrastructure. Now we're telling my kids and young families, you got to pay the same thing, the property tax, the sales tax, and the wheel tax, plus this fee. And we're not crediting the fee back to them. It's not a cash flow thing. We're just simply saying, we're the good growth, you're the bad growth. And that's really, I mean, I'm not getting down on people like it. It's a human instinct, this territorialism. But we've got to rise above it. And I'm against it. I could go on and on about my meetings in Franklin, and I'm glad I live in Hendersonville.
Are you also against negotiated fees?
It depends. It's
exact same amount. Impact fee, exact same amount.
It's negotiated fees are voluntarily agreed to by the developer.
Okay.
So it's certainly you're certainly not going to get in the kind of trouble you can get into by misallocating an impact fee.
Thank you.
Alderman Petrelli.
Mr. Shealy, can you just give, I know this is tough, but just, and you touched on some of it, but just a 2.5-minute overview, historical, institutional knowledge of the vesting law for Tennessee. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So let me preach to the attorney about the vesting. So please give me a little grace here. But so there's a concept. The concept of vesting existed prior to the 2014 law. In some areas, they had a state law that said you vest at this point. In Tennessee, you had to go before a judge, and the judge would figure out when you vested. And so you have one case in Mount Juliet where the city of Mount Juliet wanted a developer to start burying his utilities, and he was in the third phase. So he literally had poles going in and then going down, and anyhow, he said, no, I'm vested, you can't change these rules on me. I'm, in my last two phases. And the judge said, that's right, he's vested, so you can't make him, you can make it, in the next subdivision he does, you can make him bury him, but you can't make him bury him for this one. So that worked out well. Then we had another developer where the city of Nolensville changed their street regs. After he'd already pretty much installed the street, I mean, a lot of the street, and it was basically wanted it wider, more right-of-way. So it was, I want to say, about $500,000 change. And he went to a different judge, and they said, well, you haven't completed it yet, so, go ahead and make the changes. So what we wanted was a law that said, okay, there's a point where the rules that are in place stay with that subdivision in perpetuity. And it's not that, somebody gets vested and you've got to green light everything. It just means whatever rules are in place stay with that project. So in 2013, we went to the General Assembly with this law, and it always nothing for us ever goes through in the first session. So we've got it passed in 2014. That basically said, anytime a city votes to pass, either through their Board of Mayor and Aldermen or their Planning Commission, that project is vested. And so it's not vested forever, but it's vested for, if it's a multi-phase project, it's vested for either 15 or 20 years. I don't remember right now. But that's been in place. And ironically, it varies, only in cases like this do we get involved in local changes. Because if you're talking about changing your sidewalk ordinance, the guys that are in the middle of a subdivision, it doesn't affect them. It's kind of funny, if you go into my neighborhood, Windstar Bay, at one time the sidewalk was 2 feet off of the curb, and then before they started the last phase, they changed it to 4 feet off of the curb. So my neighbor's house sidewalk goes up and then just a hard left and then back up.
I was wondering why it was like that.
Yeah. So that was it was just simply that subdivision was, maybe 40% done, and then the bottom fell out and everything sat for a long time, and the rules changed, and Goodall came in to develop it, and that rule changed, had nailed it.
Thank you, and I appreciate, I asked that question for the benefit of everybody, because the vesting law has been challenged a couple times in the state of Tennessee, and it's not only in residential, but in industrial land use, and it's come out in favor of the developer most times, which is why back in September, when we talked about vesting, I asked that we kind of, explore more into that. So I appreciate your explanation, and I appreciate when you'll send out that law. And again, if we have another session about this, I think it's something that needs to be discussed, because it is a state law now. Thank you.
Okay. Next. 5 minutes.
I'll be brief. It's been a long night for everybody. I appreciate y'all letting us be part of the process. I'm David Lucky. I own Southeastern Building. We've probably built more houses and more commercial than maybe any other single developer in Hendersonville. So I can just tell you from personal experience, I grew up here, lived here my entire life. I started coming up here when I was 21 years old, and I've been negotiating development fees since I was 21 years old. So what's worked in the past is worked. I don't see a need to get yourselves all tied up and all bound around the axle, so to speak, and trying to disperse these funds inside a contained environment. The last subdivision, or last community that was subdivided that wasn't rezoned, was one of mine. It was 7 lots on Saundersville Road outside of the city of Hendersonville in the planning region. We negotiated a pay-in-lieu fee of $54,000. It's 7 lots. It's $8,000 a lot impact fee. 1 acre. Okay. Well, we couldn't do anything else. Y'all weren't going to rezone it, so. Anyway, so that's $8,000 a lot. And getting back to the costs that we currently spend, it's not like that we don't have impact or development or capacity fees now. Before I stick a shovel in the ground for any one house, a 2,500 square foot house, we spend a minimum of $10,000 on capacity fees, taps, permits, and plan reviews. That is before any pay in lieu of fees for road development. It goes up to as much as $15,000, $16,000. What happens is as these fees continue to climb inside these municipal jurisdictions, you see people go to other areas, and it's already happened in the city of Hendersonville. The city of Hendersonville, I would bet money, I hadn't seen the final numbers on 2018 yet, but less permits were pulled in 2018 than they were in 2017. And that's because it's the first time ever, and Mr. Gahn will probably speak to this, there's more new homes sold in the city of Gallatin than the city of Hendersonville this past year ever. So, Ms. Cunningham, when you say that you had a customer say it's hard to do business in the city of Hendersonville, I've done business in every single county around Davidson County and Davidson County, and this is a challenging place to do business. And I've done it everywhere. So,
I have a question. I appreciate you sticking around.
sure, thank you.
Tell me why.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Oh, is it not on?
I fell asleep.
We'll wake up. Okay. Tell me why a developer would not want impact. I mean, it would give certainty going in, and it sounds like you might be able to save some money if instead of trying to haggle and negotiate and all these horse trading or whatever. You know going in what it is. Why would?
Well, we can wade off into the report that was done, but the report is a draft. And I think on page 5 at the top of it, it actually says, I think it's 5 or 7, that it says that they'll alter the report to whatever y'all come up with in here. They'll change it. It doesn't have to be based on their math. It can be based on just whatever y'all decide. So that's exactly what I'm dealing with when I'm dealing with developing a new piece of property. And you would be crazy to go out and buy something today in this environment, not knowing what your costs are and not knowing what the municipality is going to do to you.
But you don't know that anyway. I mean, you going into it, you're going to be negotiating with.
You just negotiate the best deal you can,
Right.
and you walk. And what I'm trying to say, or what I was trying to say a moment ago, was at some point you hit an economic tip point and you go somewhere else. Now, I'm passionate about the city of Hendersonville because I grew up here. I didn't have to build down here. I built in every single county around Davidson and Davidson. I enjoy building here. I enjoy having my company here. Got a lot of employees that live here, and I'm passionate about the community, and I want to give back. One of the things that we did as a company, and I wanted to speak to this too, was try to develop office. I've heard for years around here, why isn't there more office? Why isn't there more office? Well, one, nobody was building any, so we stepped into the fray. I've built 20 buildings in the city of Hendersonville in the last, I don't know, since '96. I mean, we've contributed not just to the residential side, but without the rooftops, without the rooftops, there is no other commercial or office development. I'm sorry, I've gone over. I just really wanted to.
I'd ask to extend it. I took up some of this time. I'd ask to
I'll give him
extend it.
another minute or two.
Well, I'll try to wrap it up. I've got a lot to offer. I appreciate being part of the process. If there was some type of an advisory group or something else that we could contribute, we'd certainly be willing to. I'd just like to hand this out. It's a little saying that I've looked at for years. It's just the circle of life on development and about what needs to really happen in the development cycle in order to have good growth. And you can't have good commercial growth, good office growth without employment, population growth, land development for houses, for people to live. The more people that live here and work here, the stronger the community will be. So look at that. I'll be happy to answer any questions. That was my abbreviated short spiel.
Thank you, Mr. Lucky.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions? Are you guys all done? Oh. Sorry.
I blindsided you.
Andy? Alderman Bolt.
Yeah. It might be for a little bit about what you had just said about some sort of advisory group or whatever, but I had proposed to a number of you, and I talked to the mayor about this specifically, I talked to Keith about this too, and I just have not had the time and maybe not the expertise either, but I had wanted to, in consultation with a number of people, put together a growth summit, basically looking at what we would like the future of Hendersonville to look like. And it might be an opportunity, I'm not saying that we stop everything, but might be an opportunity to look at impact fees, negotiated fees, and other type things as part of a process for what we as citizens want the city of Hendersonville to look like. Originally, we looked at the end of February. There's no way we could do that. Edsel Charles, bringing in people like that to communicate, maybe towards the end of April. So maybe that's just something we can have. I can talk to the mayor a little bit more about. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
Well, first of all, I'm Mike Gaughan. I live at 120 Ashland Point, and I've lived here 53 years, something like that. Been in the real estate business for 35 years here in the city of Hendersonville. First of all, from a realtor standpoint, we're always against any kind of taxation or fee that is isolated to one business. We always promote more of a broad-based taxation in order to pay for the services that we all get. It doesn't make sense to just isolate one factor of our society to say this is what you need to pay. If I sell my house today and move into a new house, I'm going to have to pay an impact fee if you were to pass this. I'm already a citizen in this town. Over 50% of new homes sold in this area are to residents in this city. So you're double taxing the people that already live here. Do you have any idea what $1,000 increase in the price of a house means to home buyers? Nationwide, $1,000 increase will eliminate 130,000 home buyers. A 0.25% increase in interest rate will take 1 million home buyers out of the marketplace. So every time you sit up here and decide those kind of things, think about what you're doing to your children, your grandchildren, as you increase the cost. In 2015, the average price per square foot in Hendersonville was $108. You know what it is today, 3 years later? $138 on average. That's including all your resales. So it's not like it's not costing more, and affordability is becoming a huge issue, not only in this town, but across the nation. So when you start looking and thinking about your children and your grandchildren being able to afford homes, you need to think about these rules and these taxations and these fees that you're putting on to different properties. And I thank you for your time and all that you do for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaughan. Anybody have a question for Mike? Mayor?
He got off real easy. No, it's not for Mike. Just one comment. I got to tell you, I have never heard from anybody that we've talked to about locating Hendersonville, bringing an office, that we don't have enough people here. I've never, ever heard that we don't have enough people here for offices to move out here. I have heard from retailers that wish we had more people.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But in talking with so many folks about offices, that's never been an issue for them. What their issue is about offices, that we don't have offices built, is they can't have them to move in right now. It's not an issue of labor. We have the labor here. In fact, we have the statistics that show people who live in Hendersonville and what their professions are who are working in Nashville. And Rocky McElhaney tells me that I can tell this story all the time, that when people started to find out in Nashville that he was building in Hendersonville, he had a lot of Hendersonville folks contact him and say, I want to work with you when you move to Hendersonville. And when he got back to them, he said, yeah, it's a little bit less than what I anticipated making, but I'll still take it because then I don't have to drive to Nashville. We have professionals that live out here right now that are looking forward for offices coming here. We don't need more people for that. Retail's a different story. Also, I've got to let you know that I've gotten 2 emails in the past week, and certainly some emails before that, of people who have chosen not to live here because our roads are so bad.
Oh.
So, that's it.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Sprouse.
Thank you. Unfortunately, impact fees won't pave roads. Mike, I just wanted to tell you, thank you for mentioning one thing. All the comment was valuable, but one thing touched me, and I think it's important that we talk about affordability, particularly in Middle Tennessee. My wife and I both grew up in Hendersonville. We met at Hendersonville High School. And last week I was sitting there thinking, trying to do the math, and realizing that first house that we bought 23 years ago in the Candlewood subdivision and how much we paid for it, and realizing how much that house is going for now, how much houses in that neighborhood are going for now. And trying to do the math and think if we were making the same, recognizing some growth, if the income growth that was constant from that time was to our income, I don't think we'd be able to buy that house. And the other thing when he hit is when I started doing this, the day I was elected, I had a 2-year-old and a 6-day-old. And I always talked about how I wanted to make sure Hendersonville was a place that was a viable place for them to choose when it was time for them to live here. Those kids just in the last few months turned 21 and 18. It's no longer conceptual to me. And I know that one of the best ways to maintain the values of this community are that the children who grow up in this community have a place when it's time for them to start families of their own. However we deal with that, Mike, I just want to say thank you for bringing up the issue of affordability, because we always want every house to cost above average. But then we all think about when it's our parents, our grandparents, or our children who are all of a sudden looking for that affordable house, who want to stay in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
Appreciate that. Impact fees do help us pave roads. They help us widen roads, create new roads. They help us do things with roads that allow greater capacity. What they also do is they free up money that we're currently using for other amenities that would be paid for with impact fees. They free up money so that we can repave and repair roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else? Yes, of course.
How are you guys? I'm not going to be very well liked, I guess, from behind me. You guys are good businessmen, that's for sure. How many?
Name.
My name's Chris Spencer, by the way. I ran on this issue, and it does concern me. And I am a conservative. I hate taxes, but our taxes are going up. They've been going up twice. They're going to probably be raised by this body and for sure by the county. And Mount Juliet's going to get tripled in their property taxes for that growth. So this development does raise taxes on the current citizens that are here. So I'm in favor of the impact fees as high as we possibly can do for a few reasons, okay? First of all, you just passed Forest Park and you made them have a $3,500 fee. Now, how many of you think that you can come in here with a new development and not charge at least $3,500 for the next development? If you voted to pass something for less than $3,500, y'all be tarred and feathered. There's no way with our infrastructure problems. There is no way that you could pass another development without a large impact fee regardless. And so I'm glad Russ is on this board because you brought up a great point. Me being a businessman, I would like to know what my fees are up front so I can either pass them on to the consumer or make cuts in my budget line. So, but the most important thing that I see for an impact fee is it takes stress off this board tremendously. And boy, that needs to happen. We have two different competing sides in this room. It's very obvious they don't get along. And every time there's a development that comes in here, it just brings stress on this city. It doesn't do any of you any good. Your jobs would be a heck of a lot easier. You wouldn't have to negotiate with really good businessmen that really know what they're talking about because the fee's already there. Your life will be a heck of a lot better, and at least we'll have some money. okay? So that's why I'm in favor of as high as we can possibly do, because we got infrastructure problems because of this high development. We got to build schools. We got so many things that we have to build because of this growth. So I know that may not be popular, but I really do think that this body here, it would take a lot of stress off your lives moving forward because the deal is already set. You want to do business here in Hendersonville? This is what it costs to do business here in Hendersonville. If they don't like it, they don't like it. And again, if it's too high, you can renegotiate it and lower it. So I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Oh, wait, I have somebody in the queue. Oh. Alderman Bolt. Oh, wait a minute.
I've listened to you, Bill,
Oh.
quite a bit at times, so.
Is it
what are you talking
non,
about?
he,
I was gonna ask
Okay.
a question of Chris.
Okay.
Actually, so,
you, withdraw?
yeah. you-
Okay.
You don't have to, but, I appreciate that you want to take the stress off this board. I'm surprised almost, but I do appreciate that. And you're right.
Why would you be surprised
Oh, come
at that?
on, work with me. Anyway, I agree with that. I think it does alleviate stress because it's already a fee. You can't make it as high as you want to because it's already done. So whatever the fee's going to be, the fee's going to be. So we can't arbitrarily make that impact fee high. We could negotiate a fee. My question might be, is a comment I made before, and that is on the, and you don't know the answer to this, but I'm throwing it out there just to have a conversation.
Sure.
And that's, I understand that it's going to help drive revenue, but it's going to help drive revenue over time. With negotiated fees, you're able to, and again, I haven't decided, but with negotiated fees, we can drive revenue immediately for those specific issues. If we have impact fees, you're going to have a significant lag. And so if you're not for taxes, which none of us are, there's going to be a revenue shortage, I think, in that short term to make up for that until those impact fees have caught up.
Well, yeah, but you can't negotiate Forest Park again or the other developments anyways. You might as well start from you might as well get something right now. So as far as, I mean, there's other ideas that we can do. Like for Forest Park, for instance, they haven't broken ground. You might have gotten, what, a couple $100,000? I mean, what are you going to do with a couple $100,000? I mean, you're not going to do anything. It's going to take time. It's going to be 10 years for Forest Park to, so you're in the same situation with a negotiated deal. No developer is going to come and just hand $2 million check in hopes that this market's going to stay hot.
Yeah, maybe we're miscommunicating a little bit. With an impact fee, it's going to go all over the place.
Yeah, but at least you can possibly plan for it. So I'm not sure if it's legal. I'm not a lawyer. I haven't looked at that. But if we have impact fees, and let's say we have 300 homes that are pulling permits a year, and we get 4,000 impact fees, that's $1.2 million. Well, $1.2 million right off the bat can probably help with a $20 million bond that we can help get infrastructure immediately. I mean, I'm not sure if you can legally do that or not.
No, can't. But, yeah.
But you can move money around to make that possible, I'm sure. But so what I'm really listening to this tonight. If I wanted to be up there, and if I were up there, I would love to not have to deal with the infighting that we have, and the citizens as well. We have so much infighting now over these developments. Half of us don't want them, and half of us want them. And so I just think it would really help this board moving forward. It would just take a lot of stress off you people, you know. And
okay. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Sprouse.
I have a comment, a question, and a motion. First, the comment is differences of opinion are not infighting. It's part of democracy and deliberative process. The question I have is, did everyone get a copy of the vesting law? Were there enough to get all the way to the end of the table? You good, Mr. Robinson? And with that, I move we adjourn.
Do I hear a second? Meeting adjourned. to use this again.